see if anybody starts to join. I mean, frankly, I could really just get started whenever, I guess. Yeah, I know I haven't been on this in a little while. So, frankly, this is really what I just. So, I guess I'm just going to open it up and discuss some of this then. So, where am I getting this idea from? Where do I have this idea that Christians today are trapped in suspense? There's a trap going on. There has to be some form of a trap happening. Christians are trapped into the idea. I guess you could say that Christians are trapped into the idea now that Jesus could not have returned. They're trapped into this idea that Jesus could not have actually meant what he meant when he said that these were the days of vengeance, that the days he was living in were the days themselves. Why is it that Christians don't accept that? I mean, if Jesus had to accept that knowledge, why don't we accept that today? Is it strictly an influence of doctrine? Is it a mandate by the sword? What really is it? I'm really curious because I'd like to believe in good faith that that churches today, especially most of the people that go to them, are good people. Um, they do in general have a paradigm that believes in a good God. Um, I can also accept that not many people live up to the standards that are made an exception for, I guess, Jesus' standards if you go by theosis. So I understand evil things still happen in the world. I get that. But evil was never meant to be stopped in the world, at least not according to the story. Sin was meant to be ended, at least in a way that was fulfilled, where people weren't condemned by the old law anymore, the law of Moses, the old law of Abraham. So um, we need to understand that there's a primary distinction between the Christians of the first century writing these letters versus the Christians that have existed beyond Vatican I, into Vatican II, and even how the Archbishop of Canterbury and all the other, you can really call them the 45,000 denominations of Christianity have expanded since the inception, right? So we're 2,000 years out from the events that the letters in the New Testament say take place. And it's kind of, I mean, common sense and kind of a silly thing to say, but a lot of things can happen in 2,000 years. 2,000 years worth of people, say, even if they were able to live 100 years, were able to exact their paradigm and spread their ideas throughout the world about the book. So you have a lot of manipulation, not just in the secular world from the past few hundred years. You have manipulation about the ideas of Christianity by Christians for over 1,500 years before the book was ever even made acceptable to the public. At least in a way after its canonization was able to be spread peacefully. The ideas of it anyway. So my question, I guess, that I really have for a lot of people that are still waiting for Jesus to return is what's left of the parable of the fig tree for us to see, right? Because if you're placing yourself into the position of the Olivet Discourse, Jesus made the parable of the fig tree where he said that you would see the seasons come and go, you would see the changes like you would see in the changes of the fig tree as it grows and as it ripens and as it hibernates. You would see these changes in your time. We have no temple today. The temple that was pointed to back then is destroyed. It is gone. Right? The altar therein, which many have referred to as the separation of the veil between heaven and earth, that is gone. Same as you would have to assume with Abraham's bosom, which that's its own conversation. Abraham's bosom could not be relieved until after, I believe it was the fourth or fifth vial in Revelation. So how far along can we get into this story until we realize that it all has to be completed within the time frame that they've given? because that feels like exactly how you have to interpret it when you read through it all. Now, you believe that Jesus will return in 2032 to 2033. What's your thoughts about this? I can't substantiate it. And it's not that I can admit entirely. In a world of knowledge, I could be entirely wrong. All right? Um, the problem is the narrative of the entire thing. When you read through the words of Jesus and the apostles, they're all looking at this as an impending event to occur, especially within not necessarily the lifetime of Jesus, but Jesus ended up telling individuals in that generation that they would see the things occur, right? So you have the sense of there being a calculation. What is a generation, right? If we're going to Matthew 24, 34, I believe it is, when we're talking about the, I guess you could say, really the events leading up to Jesus at the Olivet Discourse telling them that this generation shall not pass until all these things are fulfilled, right? We can get to that parable, or at least that phrase, if you want. That's really crucial to understand. I mean, that's only one of many that we can talk about, but frankly, if Jesus is looking at these people in a private meeting and telling them that are the people pointing at the temple, like, what's going to happen at this temple, and he tells them, not one stone will be left upon another. And he gives all these examples and events and tells them, just like the fig tree, just as it ripens, as it grows, as it hybrids, you'll see the things come to pass. You're going to see the events I talk about come to pass, right? And when that occurs, you'll know the end is nigh. That's what he's telling you. You'll see me arrive. You'll see me return. And so that's not far off, unless we have to presume illogically that these people are 2,000 years old now. How can that really work? I'm curious as to what a lot of people think about this, because this isn't something that a lot of people are open to discuss about in a peaceful way, and I really want to I want to try that. I want to kind of explore that, because frankly it's too easy to get into discussions of bad faith. Not even close. Can you maybe elaborate further, Albie? I mean, this is a discussion that even evolves into the realms of history, the realms of anthropology, archaeology. Um, where am I not even close at? Because and I have to make this presumption, I'm sure, but I'm sure you're presuming that there has to be a third temple, which is not biblically sound. It's not biblically founded. They would have to build a new altar, which would mean that Abraham's bosom is on a hiatus until a new altar is built, which is illogical. You would have to presume that the seven churches in Asia are still intact, the ones that dressed in Revelation, which all of them have been laid waste, just as the rest of all of Judea at the time had fallen to Roman occupation in an enforcement mechanism that was more heavy-handed than the first time. Jerusalem was ransacked by the Gentile armies, as they keep referring to them as the abomination of desolation. They were also referred to as the Gentile armies. So we'd have to pretend that Jerusalem didn't get ransacked for 1,280 days, or 40 and 2 months, as the Bible references, and also is backed up by historical documentation. We'd also have to deny that captives weren't led away into foreign nations, which would take into accountability of whether or not Tacitus was correct in his interpretation of the people that were taken away and sent into other nations as you can say, enslaved peoples. Daniel did happen. Right, and you're going to have scholars argue about the dating of Daniel, whether it was actually dated to be in the Medo-Persian Empire, if it came later. Yeah, you can't really necessarily get rid of a cash-based society, though, Gloom. I mean, if you think about it, there would be no point to really substantiate any invention after the return, for that matter, if you believe that the world was to end. But Jesus never said the whole world was going to end. I mean, it doesn't even logically make sense, to the extent that if you think about when Jesus talked about them fleeing into the mountains when they saw the armies encircling the city. What point would that be? If the whole of the world was going to end, what wilderness were they going to wait to? What would be the purpose of them to flee with their physical bodies to a new location if the whole of the material world was to be ended? It wouldn't make sense. And it doesn't. I mean, even to the logic and wisdom of what Solomon had said in the Old Testament, that generations come and go, the earth abides forever. That means a lot. We have to have consistency when it comes to the story. And if the consistency of the story is that the earth wasn't meant to end, then we have to continue that idea. And I'm sure that even Christians at the time knew that. So, precisely, Swisher. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't say it would end. It does say that there would be wrath to come on Jerusalem, the land of Judea, more specifically Jerusalem. What about the mark and the evil one who will declare himself God? Is he referring to the man of sin who would sit upon the altar and proclaim himself as God? There's an individual in the battle, actually, the referred to battle of 40 and 2 months, the trotting down of the city by the Gentile armies. There was a man who led the Zealot army by the name of John of Gishgala. You can look into him. He essentially fulfills that mark to its totality all the way until the temple's destruction. Right, he can't build a temple again if it doesn't exist for him to defile it. So essentially, really, that's really what the point of the text that I have down here is saying. A temple still existing would be proof that Jesus hasn't returned yet. There is no temple. The temple is gone. And we know when it was gone. We know when it was destroyed, and we actually have not only documentation to prove it, but also a lot of cultural material that shares its victory over the battle in different areas, like Trajan's Column, for example. You can look at Trajan's Column and see the victory over Jerusalem in that specific piece of history. Yeah, you can ask, Chris, if you're an atheist. Everybody's allowed to ask any questions they want, frankly. This is about a story, right? We can make a debate on the authenticity of the story if we want to, but I think that if people are going to believe the story is authentic, then we should really get down to the authenticity of the story, right? If you're going to ground the story in the basis of reality, then you should try and find some form of realistic consistency within it. And if the realistic consistency throughout the whole book is that they're saying, this is the end time, we're in the last days, these be the days of vengeance, and all things written shall be fulfilled. Go to now, you rich men, weep and howl for your miseries that shall come upon you, for you've heaped up treasures for the last days. Jesus coming quickly in Revelation. I mean, it's all telling you throughout the whole of the book. You can look at all of the words from Jesus and the apostles all the way up to the end of John the Revelator. It tells you that it's all ending quickly. Everything that was coming quickly. Jesus told them that they would see the events come and go, and some of them would still be alive when they saw him return. It's consistent throughout the book. So frankly, if we're going to look at this as a story, just as if we were looking at the Odyssey or the Iliad as a story, we have to look at the consistencies and the plot holes. We have to look at correlative and comparative information historically, and any newfound information archaeologically that could substantiate a reason for why they chose certain language, why we're looking at certain events differently. I made a couple of videos before talking about the Merneptah and the Mesha stele. And the existence of those steles are important because in the Merneptah stele there's no existence of the identity of Yahweh at all in terms of the correlation to the identity of Israel, which this is going back at least to 1200 BC. And when you go all the way up to the Mesha stele, that's one of the first instances you'll see of Yahweh where Mesha, King Mesha, is actually proclaiming himself to be destroying vessels to Yahweh as he's invading into villages that are identified with Israel, and the 12 tribes of Israel. And so you have really the documentation in Kings, the battle with Mesha against the Moabites, and then you have the Mesha stele, which is the opposite propaganda. And you can read both of them, and they both come to different conclusions, right? This is why you have to have discussions in a modern sense between the two and comparatively figure out what's true about the story. And I think in good faith, a lot of people have tried with the Bible. I think they've tried. But I think a lot of people suffer from one of the first levels of epistemology. The first aspect of gaining knowledge is tribalism. And when you realize that you foundationally believe something and someone else believes the opposite, you separate yourself from them. That's one of the first aspects of encountering any form of knowledge is a separation. It's either that or a unification. In reality, there's no prophet lived. It's a lie that people made. There's a potential for that too. You have to think about this like an evil villain. If you had the ability to be a scribe, that was a very much a minority position to even to have, because it was more like a trade or a real profession, a skilled, very skilled profession, a mental one, where limited amount of people even have the ability to properly record events in history, right? You're talking about people that have a standard of historical recording from 2,000 years ago. It is like entirely different than what we have today. Our standard of evidence is entirely higher, much higher. Beyond the scholastic era, the development of empiricism, and then out of that science, like, we're in an entirely different level of standards for demanding what evidence we need. And so this is why this is a great time to discuss this, because surprisingly enough, with the establishment of Israel, which that's its own discussion, everyone has their own opinion on it, but there has been a lot more archaeological digging going on in where the previous land of Judah was. So we're having a lot of this this new evidence coming forward about the time 2,000 years ago. We can look at it even in different regions, obviously, because of the stratigraphic record, but there's a lot more coming out about the time. More scholars are going to be coming out and discussing the newfound evidence and trying to, in a creationist aspect, talk about how archaeology proves the Bible. And then you're going to have the opposite with the atheists, or even people who are more atheist leaning but agnostic, which kind of lean toward an opposing factor, trying to be as conservative as possible with the evidence. So when we do discuss this, some people have a different standard of evidence. Their standard of evidence at times is, my church believes this, has taught this, we know this to be true. This is why we stay as Methodist, or stay as Lutheran, stay as whatever you may be, Catholic. It's because you're bound to a perception of the book that has been expounded upon you every Sunday, maybe twice a week, every Wednesday, Sunday, depending on the church, depending on the services that are held. You're being exposed to different perceptions of the book all the time. Now we're getting closer and closer to what the actual perception of the book is, because more people have better reading comprehension. More people have the ability to read and write. More people also have the ability to critically think now than ever before in terms of these higher level discussions. And I think that we will find out an answer to this very quickly, but I don't think it'll hit the mainstream. I don't think that it's going to hit the ground running. It hasn't. I've seen people try to make hit the ground running, some friends of mine, that it just gets choked out, you could say, in terms of the exposure. It is an unfortunate thing, because this, well, I could see why. It could end a lot of institutions, frankly. If the truth of their book is released, that, well, and there is any truth behind it, that Jesus did return 2,000 years ago, you know how damaging that would be to almost every single futurist church that could exist in the world? The implications would be more than damning. It would be catastrophic to economic systems. It could be insanely problematic. And so you will see a specific, especially even with TikTok, I'll admit it on here, it'll probably slow down the live for me saying it, but they've cut back on the hashtags that involve this stuff. By my assumption, we're in the new heaven. It's not my assumption. Absolutely not. It's not by my assumption. The new heaven and new earth, all that reference, and it all of it has to have passed according to what Jesus has said, not according to what I've said. None of what I am saying here, okay, so some of it may well be my opinion. A lot of the stuff that's going on in archaeology and a lot of the stuff in the modern world I can speculate on. The stuff that I'm talking about in the Bible, I am going back and I will reference 100% of the time. There's not a thing that isn't referenced in that book that I will not go back to and speak with, because I believe that this is the outcome, that Jesus did return. According to the story, he had to have returned. And if he didn't return and fulfill the promise to the people he said he would return to, then that is a significant character flaw in the story of Jesus. And we can't have that, frankly. If we're going to take the story serious, we need to listen to what Jesus said when he says, "These be the days of vengeance, in which all things that are written shall be fulfilled." He is very clearly talking about Scripture, which at their time was the Old Testament. We could talk about eschatology, the fulfillment of it all, right? What verse is that? That's going to be, I believe, in Luke. That's Luke. I don't have them at the top of my head. I believe that's in Luke. Let's see, what verse is that? Oh, Dwayne, what's up, man? So that's Luke 21:22 to 36. There's a longer one, but it's in the beginning.
She coming in? Come on. You're okay, hon. Kitty cat.
He's calling you.
Come on, hon.
Sitting right here.
Come on, crazy. Maybe she's being a little crazy.
I love her. She's funny. Oh, thanks, Coach. Yeah. Yeah, Luke 21:20. I mean, it starts right out. These be the days of vengeance, that all things which are written shall be may be fulfilled. And then it talks even further about what will happen after that. Woe unto them that are with child, and to them that give suck. In those days there shall be great distress in the land, wrath upon a people. They shall fall by the edge of the sword, led away captive into all nations, Jerusalem trodden down of the Gentiles, till the times of the Gentiles be fulfilled. Right? It's that one. I mean, there's so many other verses that correlate to it. We can go to even James 5:1. James 5:1 is a big one. You have to listen to even Jesus. You can talk to his brother. Yep. Oh, thanks for the likes, guys. I appreciate it. Almost at 2K likes, I think. I appreciate it. And thanks for the follows. I got like 4 new followers. Anyone who follow, I appreciate it for real. I'm trying to do this more often. It's just I've been kind of busy doing things, doing a lot of different work. There's like no free will in this economy, so you know how that is. It's crazy out here. No, I appreciate you guys sharing the live too, man. I heard Dwayne in the swamp, man, with Dwayne. Yeah. Oh, man. What's going on, everybody? So, yeah, I mean, I really look at this in the extent of if the disciples and the apostles are asking Jesus, pointing to a temple that we know exists at that time, and he says to them, then the one stone will be left upon another, that's either one, a fulfillment of prophecy, or two, written after the fact and then proclaimed to be prophecy, which is a question of authenticity, but the Occam's razor nonetheless, right? Thanks, Switch. I appreciate it, man. Just curious where a lot of people get the idea that this isn't over, other than I can imagine that there's a lot of dogmatic ideology that's existed. Just in the Western world, obviously, but the Western world has been predominantly widespread and diverse in the amount of different ideologies that spread from, especially the Christian cults, you know. If you look at the difference between, like, the Docetics, like the first century Christians, and you go into some of the Gnostics even, that come later, Cathars, Bogomils, it's kind of crazy. There's really so many different understandings about the Bible when it was first being canonized that a lot of people don't even take into consideration today. I mean, even this interpretation of the 70 AD return is not far-fetched to the early church fathers. This is something that was accepted by many of them until the canonization of the Bible. Once all of the New Testament letters were canonized, the interpretation and really just the conversation of any form of preterist idea goes out the window. It's not talked about, at least that we can find in documentation, I believe until a Jesuit priest talked about it in the 1500s. So you're talking about almost a millennia of really, it was a diverse control of different church methodologies. You had obviously the Western Roman Church, and then you had the Byzantine Church developing into the Eastern Orthodoxy, and then there's a lot of diverse, a lot of history in the expansion of the idea itself of what the Christians espoused. Pete, what's up, dude? What's going on, brother? But yeah, I mean, it's kind of a smoother night. I did this live last, I think it was Saturday night. I was going till like 2 in the morning, man. And then it was like just a big boom of people came through. I don't know where it came from. Kind of glad it's like 10 right now. But I mean, I don't mind answering questions with people. It's just sometimes people send so many, I can't keep up with them. You know, and people have their own interpretations on this, obviously. I'm not asking anyone to believe me or trust me or do any of that. I just hope you would do some research on your own. I'm hoping that that's what this does, is that it inspires you to at least go out on your own and figure it out. Because if you're of an open mind, you can find it. It's out there. The evidence exists. But some people's standard of evidence is superseded by their ideology, and some people have a higher standard of evidence. It's just the way it is. Atheists are going to come and they're going to say they have a higher standard of evidence than what you'll have available for what's in the Bible or the historical documentation correlating to it, and that's fine, you know, and I've got nothing wrong with that. If you want more and more to prove it, then I think that that's acceptable. But I think when you're presented with something that is truthful, you should definitely consider it and not just block it out or call people heretical or anathema because of it. Right, Pete. No, totally, dude. That's exactly it. They don't want... They can't handle any evidence that goes against their paradigm, because then they have to rework the entire thing. You know, most people sit there and think that they have the whole world figured out, and they'll share their idea with it. And I'm going to be honest with every one of you that when I come in here and talk about this, I'm only talking about this from the extent that of the knowledge that I know of it, right? I want other people to look into this. I want more people to know about this. It is frustrating, Pete. Yeah, I know, man. I was too. I still am. It's what's hard is that we will set ourselves against each other because of our beliefs and our ideas. We're naturally inclined to do that at the very first step of gathering knowledge. That's what tribalism is, the first level of epistemology. And everybody reaches it eventually. And what we do beyond that will obviously be what we're remembered for. One out of 1,000 will listen, and that 1 out of 1,000 is worth it. When you have millions to billions of people on the earth, dude, 1 out of 1,000 is worth it. So this is a good question, Timber Creek Leather. That's actually a real good question. This actually gets into the discussion of the scholarly origins of Revelation itself. So we are taking into account the understanding of a man named Irenaeus, who came nearly a century after all the events occurred in Jerusalem in 70 AD, to essentially claim, and he even made a lot of false claims, which, don't get me wrong, Irenaeus has been known to make correct claims, his false claims are very well damning. One of them being that Jesus was living to the age of 50, which is completely antithetical to what anyone in the church circle would have accepted even at that time, that Jesus was 50 and not in his 30s when he had passed. But Irenaeus is the one who had stated that Revelation itself would have been dated to 95, and we're taking the account of a man who had existed 100 years after the events that had occurred, 100 years after the living of any of the apostles there at that time before they were unalived. And frankly, it's a really complex issue, because we're talking about people that we can't even reference most of the time. We have to insinuate that what they were doing was out of good faith when they were making their translations and writing their books. I mean, that's kind of out of the window now with Eusebius. Eusebius is now he's under a lot of constraint right now. He's in the spotlight for potentially having manipulated portions of historical documents out of the histories of Tacitus as well as Josephus, putting in Christianized wording, making it seem like they were more inclined to accept Christians than they actually were. Because, I mean, neither Flavius Josephus or Tacitus cared about the Christians, the Christian cults, or any of the people therein. Yeah, Pete, that's a great point. I mean, again, this is the argument that's going to come back to it. It comes back to the authenticity of John. Do you think John was correct in being asked to measure the temple? Because if we understand the messenger that came to him to be Jesus Christ, and Jesus Christ told him to measure the temple, then what temple was standing? It was the second temple. It had to be the second temple, especially when it was the temple that would be measured. He said he would measure the temple, the altar, those that worship therein, believe out the court of the Gentiles, the outer court. Specifically talking about the exact design of the second temple existing at the time of the document's writing. Now, to make a claim, like Irenaeus did, that 95 is the date for Revelation, you can make that claim. But if the people are going to claim that they believe in what John said, and that John was told to measure a temple already standing, and that it correctly to them is dated to 64 or 65, what should Christians do once they accept this? It's funny, if you ask everybody on here, they'll probably tell you something a little different, but for the most part, I think that they'll all tell you you'll have to go to God. Yeah, Pete's there already. You have to worship God. Because once Jesus' short work is complete and the enemies have been put under him, Jesus' time on the throne is up, and the Father will sit on the throne after that. So, and that's how that'll be for sure. A lot of atheists dissecting Josephus and putting outsiders as the author. Yeah, that's where a lot of discussion has to come in from, not just the like historical scholars. I think translators, the classicists should be involved as well. When I think of the Quran, I mean, the Quran is still obviously what they would refer to as an Abrahamic text. It comes far later after the Bible. I haven't heard anyone really give me a full disclaimer of how the Quran is substantiated to be not necessarily not part of the Old Testament genealogy, because I have seen that to be proven true, that they do correlate it back to one of their descendants. I believe it was one of Abraham's descendants, Ishmael, if that's the correct one. I might be mistaken on that. But that is an example of what religion will do when it takes off at the point of the sword, right? I mean, Christianity did it for a long time. You know, you have the Abrahamic faith as the basis for your enforcement mechanism, and then you enforce it by material will. So, no religion really is innocent from this fact that the law systems that they create are inevitably used by systems, right? Like by government systems, they'll inevitably establish an institution based on that law system, and then that law system needs an enforcement mechanism. Who were the two witnesses? Man, I wish they had written that. I wish they had written that. See, the problem is that these guys weren't what had been written in Galatians, that they were part of the men in the light. You know, that they weren't that they weren't brothers in darkness, but brothers in light. Is that they weren't going to know of the time nor the hour. They weren't going to know about the true impending doom to come, because they weren't part of the secret meeting. They weren't involved in really a lot of the discussions about what was to be prophesied, what would to come. And I'll tell you, not a lot of people at the time, I'm sure, believed that John of Patmos was going to be accurate in his conclusion. If we're talking about him writing this in 64 to 65, used to call him crazy. They literally put him in an island. They called him mad. He was driven mad. What should followers of God call themselves? I don't know. I mean, we're all people, man. I would hope that we all have some form of relationship on our own with God. I mean, you could just say you're a believer in God, that I believe in God. You know, people want to put you in a box too. I wouldn't let them. Because as soon as they put you in a box, it gives them something to target, something to aim at, and it's not appropriate for the discussion I think that you're going to want. The discussion, if you're in good faith and you're a good person, I think that the discussion you're going to want to have, the discussion you're going to want to have is how can you gather a better relationship with God, or at least establish one that's unique to you, not by like going off of someone else's or like my interpretation of it. Like, if you're going to really look into this, I would go and do it. Irenaeus is one of the many early church fathers. Yeah, he was honestly, he was a great scholar of his time, but he made some claims that many people, even later in the church, had identified as what they would claim as false. But it depends on what you want to believe. If you believe that Jesus died at the age of 33, or if you believe he died at the age of 31, or if you believe he died at the age of in his 50s, like, a lot of these things are being discussed, and Irenaeus made the claim that he died in his 50s, which I don't think anybody could agree with. But he also made the claim that Revelation was written after the destruction of the temple, which is coincidentally useful for a futurist Christian worldview, because then the temple that the apostles and disciples pointed to wasn't actually the temple the apostles and disciples pointed to, and that the temple that John went to measure wasn't actually the second temple, but some far off future temple that was yet to be built. So he's measuring a temple that's never been built yet. The logic falls away, like, instantly. But if you take into consideration, looking at it for the historical references of the time, what milestones exist, what people exist, why certain things need to happen before the next step happens, a lot of it's all staged in the old world. You can go to the every eye shall see him, which everybody references, and they always skip out that last part of, and those which pierced him shall wail because of him, because those that wailed him, those that wailed and those which pierced him were alive at the time of his return, which makes a lot more sense why they would wail. Like, Revelation does have a lot of influences of Daniel. That is true. But then that has to bring into the question of whether or not John of Patmos himself was familiar with the language discussed in Daniel, which that could be, right? It could be why that he felt that he needed to write that. But it's also because, and if you consider this too, that Daniel had a prophecy that he was to seal up until the time of the end. And John the Revelator was told to unseal that prophecy. Which could make a lot of sense why Daniel and the book of Revelation have a correlative factor, is because Daniel was the beginning of that prophecy, of what was to come, the time of the end. And then John would be the fulfillment of it, where he would be unleashing that which was sealed away by Daniel until the time. Which, if you do believe, John, that he did measure the temple, which did include the outer court, what didn't include the outer court of the Gentiles, which is identifiable to the second temple. If you believe in John that that Jesus was going to come quickly, You know, that he was going to not only, like he said in the beginning of the book of Revelation, but at the end of it, surely I come quickly. Yeah, John definitely had been told to unseal the prophecy from Daniel. That's what the seals were inevitably releasing for and from. They originally initially came from the book of Daniel. Oh, I might take some yes, Swisha. You want to come up? Yeah, so when Daniel was told that, you know, seal up the prophecy until the time of the end, John was at the time of the end. He knew he was he called himself the brother and companion in tribulation, and knew that the time was coming. And the revelation that he was given from Christ was that these are the things which must shortly come to pass. It's according to the beginning of the book, and at the end of the book he says, surely I come quickly. Yeah, that's true. There was a lot of there's a lot of that. Where is it? Is it gonna let me pick? I say, if you want to come up, you can, man. What's up, dude? What's going on?
Let me get my headphones on. I got the basketball game on.
Oh,
Let me see.
here.
I got the Warriors on.
I have to adjust the setting real quick, my brother, because it is coming through these. Which is probably why I can't hear you. But yeah, this should hopefully work in a second. Check 1, 2. You there, bud?
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, wicked. I can hear you. Cool. How's it going, man?
Awesome. How you doing, brother?
I'm doing good. Staying alive.
Oh man, just chilling, man. I'm enjoying this live. The platform and everything is pretty great. I like the way you're doing everything. It's really good.
Trying to do something a little different, dude. I know a
No,
lot of
it's
people
really
like
good.
the base
It's a
style.
good platform. Yeah, hell yeah.
I've,
Oh, you've been touching base on a lot of things that should be touched base on.
um,
It's really edifying, honestly.
well, thanks, man. I appreciate that. I'd like to see a lot more of this expand too, and get more people.
No
to grow
doubt.
it, man. Yo, Aroach,
Yeah,
what's
I know
going on,
there's.
man? They got Aroach in here.
Hey, Ro, what's up, hey, Roach?
Howdy, howdy.
What's
How you
going
doing,
on,
brother?
boy?
Doing great. Hello, hello.
Awesome.
Yeah, you're doing
Uh,
a good job with it.
Well, thanks, man. I appreciate it. I just go on rants because I'm an absolute psychopath sometimes, and I can just do
Yeah.
this for too long.
That's,
we wouldn't be normal if we weren't a little bit psycho.
Oh, I know it, man.
yeah, I think we all are.
Yeah, that's true.
It's like nothing in life can be normal for me, so I just absolutely live it to where I can just. be
Yeah,
crazy
for
when I want.
sure. There's some good questions going on in this live too. Let's hopefully we could dissect them.
Yeah, I'm cool with a lot of that, man. There's been some good ones coming in and out, man. So the Holy
Yeah,
Spirit
let's
Bible
just-
was a big one there. That was what guy was just touching on.
Yeah, let's just try and keep it like a little bit formal. There's some lives that get a little bit crazy, so
Oh,
if we can keep it
sure.
formal.
I've never heard that.
No, you haven't.
I've
Not
been
you,
to
Roach.
host on my own, dude. I used to do that too much, where the live would kind of slow down, and then I'd just carry on
Yeah.
about some nonsense. But frankly, it's good that more people I think are getting involved with this because there's a people get too much of the ideological factor of it, and they don't really look and consider into like all the realistic factors. Like, oh yeah, the temple that they pointed to is gone, just like Jesus said. Oh yeah, the altar's gone too. So there's
Yeah.
no altar for the dead to rest under. There's no altar to have to sit on this throne. No 7 churches in Asia are left. Like you can go through all the lists, and I could even expand the list on my screen further. Frankly, it's just stuff I wrote at
Oh, yeah.
like 5 minutes. I
Yeah.
was just like, what can I put on here?
History seems to be an allergic reaction to some people.
It's a hard factor for people to look into if they aren't interested. Not a lot
Coach
of
Peter,
people
come
are
up. Yeah,
interested. I'd love
Coach
to see
Peter's
those.
He's pretty neat. I hope he comes up. He's pretty
I'll
neat.
send him an invite. If he wants to come up, he can come up. If he doesn't want to, it's a little late. I get it too. I respect the man a lot. He's really cool.
Coach P,
There he is.
What's up, guys? What's up?
What's going
what's
on, sir?
good?
Yeah, I remember Coach Peter, what, a year or 2 years ago, or a year and a half ago?
Coach P's the man. He's pretty cool.
I really liked what you did because you just let anybody up. You looked through the Bible. You just concentrated on finding it in the Bible. And you did that. I mean, hours and hours.
This live, the platform is pretty dope. The way you did it, the way you set it up, honestly, was pretty dope.
I'm glad that it's working out. I started to do this on my computer now, so I can adjust a lot more. And
I like the whole front face. I like the whole front face, taking questions, doing that. That was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Might as well put this thing to work.
That's pretty
for
sick.
anything else other than college, I was just like, nah. I'm gonna make content or go live. I might as well use it and put my ugly mug out here, dude. You know what I mean?
You're doing good.
But hey, man, it's good to see you guys here. How's everyone doing tonight? Everyone good?
All right, chilling. I'm watching the Warriors game. Just chilling.
Oh, that's what the Warriors references and come out to play. Yeah, I saw that on there. Okay.
Yeah, I'm
that's
from
cool.
California, so you know.
I'm Cali, yo, on the other coast. That's crazy. Yeah, I'm on the east where it's freezing right now.
You don't
It's
even
not
care
too
Alabama.
cold. Alabama in the house. Coach Peters from Florida, I think.
Yep. My Hurricanes ruined their season.
Oh man, so do bath salts.
I was so upset. I'm like, we were up 21-0 against Syracuse, and we can't freaking hold the lead, bro.
Man,
We're terrible.
Syracuse is hard, man. That's such an odd
I mean, yeah, they're a decent team, but man, that's just ridiculous.
you got Anthony Richardson starting for the Indianapolis Colts. That's good enough.
Yeah.
Let's see.
Let's see.
Yeah,
Let's
I
see what
mean,
people are talking
this guy's
about.
going to be the first pick of the draft, probably. Cam Ward's going to, I mean, he's,
I don't want Cam Ward. I want Shedeur Sanders. I'm a Las Vegas Raider.
yeah, well, okay. I mean, if he's last to the Dolphins, they better pick him. That's all I'm saying.
That's fair enough. That's fair enough. I doubt it though. But we'll see.
Because this guy gets hurt every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
You can't tag a Valola.
Yeah,
No.
there's a concussion waiting to happen. Like if he gets hit the wrong way, he's out for 6 weeks.
It's a walking bowling ball. Don't do it.
Yeah.
That's
All right. Who's any questions? Jesus never wrote a poem or a song. Well, why would he write a poem? He was never writing anything. He was speaking, and they were writing to him.
right.
Why would you write anything?
It's kind of interesting they would perceive it like that. Like you can only be claimed a liar if you write something down. People have written about other people being liars and cheats and doing a bunch of terrible stuff throughout history. I mean, it doesn't have to be from yourself that you make a claim and then someone has to dispute it. You can make an action and someone can write about it, and then there's a lot to it.
We could talk about Shakespeare and him being a writer.
We got Melancholy's going to come up as a guest. Let's see what's up
That's
with
the
that.
right question.
Melancholy, what's up? How's it going?
Good evening.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're good.
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're good.
Oh, wait, hold on.
Oh, lower that.
I am so sorry. My music accidentally turned on. Can you hear me?
Yeah, you're
I
good.
hear you, brother.
Okay, cool. So I see your post says the 70 AD thing, yeah?
Yes, sir.
So in my opinion, or not my opinion, but in the fact of the matter, there's a verse where Christ says, people will claim I have already appeared, right? But you won't know it until you have all seen me come from the clouds, right? With the angels. And he says, as lightning appears from the east to the west, so too shall you see me. And he even refers to the resurrection, where the dead shall come back to life. So it doesn't matter if you're dead or if you're alive. Everybody is going to know. Like, everybody's going to know that Christ has returned. That's what he says. And he says that if anybody he literally says, if anybody says that there is the Messiah here or there, or if a false prophet says this regarding me, he says, do not believe them. It's a quote unquote phrase. And then he says right after, do not believe them. For you shall see me come from the clouds with the angels in heaven, like lightning appears from the east to the west. So when you take into account the logic that you're applying here, right,
Well,
which I can understand that's what you want to go by.
Well, you have to
Yeah,
But
understand
saying
the
you go by
logic
the
of what
faith
they're
of the
saying.
word of
Logic, go ahead.
Jesus,
That's okay.
what makes you think that you can love your logic more than the word of Jesus Christ? When
Let's
Jesus
straw
says,
man.
if you don't love me
It's
the
not my
most,
own
you're not
logic.
worthy of me, meaning you won't even understand the Spirit and live in the truth. Nevertheless, perceive it.
So let me
So
acknowledge
did
at
you
least one
believe
thing. That's a
Jesus?
straw man in my position.
Yeah,
So hold on. Who's gonna
did you
take
believe
this?
Jesus' statement there for one second? Did you believe Jesus' statement there?
Where he says, don't believe anyone
Yeah,
except when you
right.
see me. Yeah, I do believe that
Okay,
actually.
so he said, "Don't believe people if they say that he's here or there." Right. So
Yeah, he says
what
that
do you
no
think?
one knows the day or
What
the
do you
hour.
think that means? That means he wasn't coming back physically, bro.
No, he says you will see me with a new body.
Yeah,
He
you.
literally says he's going to
No, he
die,
didn't say the new
resurrect,
body
and
anyway.
he's going to come back with a new body. That was the whole point of the resurrection.
No, he didn't
I
say
feel
you would
like
see
you're
me.
not really ready for
Like
the
he didn't.
truth.
He didn't like. He never said you will see him with a new body. In John 14, he tells the disciples that no, the world will no longer see me, but you will see me. Okay, so now, if the world is no longer going to see him, but you will see me, right? He's telling his disciples that they will see him, and then he says, you will know because the Spirit is going to live inside you, right? So he says that the Spirit is going to live inside you, and that's how you will see me.
Hold
So
on one
they,
second.
yeah, go to John 14 and read that passage.
Yeah,
Whoa,
dear,
whoa.
hold on. You
Excuse
made the
me?
Bible reference. I'll go
I
to the
don't mean to be
Bible
a
if you want me
bother,
to.
man. Do you think you could buy me like a half meal or maybe just a side?
Do you want me to go to John 14?
Yeah,
What was
I
that?
Yeah,
think it's like
I got you.
We can discuss John 14.
Go to
going there
John
right now.
14?
Cool. I think that'd be
I got
a
you.
cool discussion. See how that goes.
Yeah, if you could read it for me, because I
I'm right
can't
here.
do it on here.
John 14. Do not let your hearts be troubled. You believe in God. Believe also in me. My Father's house has many rooms. Are you talking about John the Gospel or John
Yeah,
the Epistle?
1 second. I'll get you the exact verse. 1 second.
Let me know if it's the Gospel or the Epistle.
It's the gospel.
Okay, I'm right
Wait,
here.
if
Then
I
John
may ask
14.
you this, because I really want to get into it, but my phone might die in a second. Do you not also believe that when the destruction of the temple is here, that Christ is going to return, and in the return of Christ, so too shall be the resurrection of the temple, but the resurrection of the temple being not the Israel that is worldly, but the new Israel which God is going to establish?
Which
And if that is
happened.
true, and if that is true, how can you say that that is true when Israel has not yet been fully and completely destroyed? Not just the temple, but referring to the entire house. If the temple was the entire city, right, in a sense, not just a physical building.
Okay.
If the entire city has not yet been completely and utterly destroyed, and the entire world has not yet turned their head towards the city of Jerusalem and said, oh my God, Jesus has come back with the angels, the dead has resurrected, and literally a new temple has erected from nowhere, literally from the miracle of God.
Okay, well, hold on.
How therefore
That-
can you claim
hold on.
that Jesus' words are not true?
That's a respectable answer, but also at the same time in Scripture, it does also say that Israel was already a nation, and if it was already a nation, all these things would have taken place. And I can point you to the Scripture that says that if the Pharisees turned over Jesus, that they would be given over not only their place but also their nation, and the word nation is in there.
Right. So that would mean that as long as Israel doesn't believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, then therefore they shall be condemned. And even today,
And
the
that
majority
happened.
of Israel still does not confess that
That
Jesus
happened at the
Christ is
time in that
Lord.
Scripture. That happened at the time in that Scripture.
I
That's
know,
why
but
he
it's still
explained that.
happening 2,000 years later as well.
Brother, listen. History can repeat, but prophecy cannot repeat.
Yeah, but prophecy
is
has
only a
not
one
been
time.
repeated. That's what I'm
It
saying.
was-
Like, we haven't
it
seen
can't
the
be
prophecy
repeated.
yet.
Okay, brother, it can't be repeated. It can only be fulfilled, and that happened. And also in John 11:48, he already said that.
But wait, hold on. What you're saying is that it's fulfilled. But Jesus says that what was finished was that he died for us. He says that his return has yet to be. He says that that is in the unknown time. That's what I'm saying.
is it at the time that he said-
you know the time of the day.
To me,
when
it seems like
he
it
says
is.
that that's
And then Paul
impossible.
and Peter end up writing a lot about the imminency. I mean, they were all expecting this.
Do you understand the single flaw I'm trying to like get to you with here? Is that Jesus is saying, don't believe anyone who says otherwise, and he says no one knows the time. Like that's literally like the issue because
When have
he's
we
literally
said
telling us
then
personally.
He told them at
And
the time.
Right.
I don't
Not
understand
you.
like what you're saying.
Have we once said that look here, look there, because Jesus is there?
Yes,
No.
you're saying,
No,
look,
we
in
have
this
not.
time
We
period,
have
in
not
that
said
place,
that.
Jesus has come back.
Well, we
That's
said
literally
that
what he
Jesus.
says.
We said that Jesus returned. We didn't say that he's here or there.
But you did not rise from the dead, and you could not confirm this yourself with knowledge. You had to read and learn this, which is exactly what Jesus is saying.
But we would have
Don't
to read and learn. this
do.
because
He's
it
saying,
wasn't
Well, hold
don't
on.
try to
before
learn an
human
idea.
sustenance.
You're
Take a
going to
pause.
see
Take a
me.
pause, guys. Take a pause. Let
You
the
know what I'm
host let the host speak what he was gonna say because he was onto something. Hold on.
My
Let him
bad.
say what he was
I'm
gonna say.
walking through the field.
You're
I
all-
can't.
you're all
I
good.
didn't know.
This is- No, you're all perfectly fine, man.
You're real quiet, Tobias. You're real quiet for me.
Because of this,
Yeah.
it's probably because of my mic being so far. But I mean, frankly,
I think
a lot of
Tobias is
discussions are
aware
going
that
on.
something is happening here.
No,
that he
hold on.
wasn't
Don't
aware
try
before.
it. Don't
That's
try
very
and
typical.
propagate
Don't
it.
put him away.
Don't
He
give her
has every
propaganda.
right
Don't
to
give her
go to God in
propaganda.
his own
Hold on.
manner.
Because
Hold on,
I
brother.
trust in
Don't
the
give her
words of Jesus
propaganda.
when Jesus says,
Well, the
"These be days of
propaganda is
vengeance,
being spread by
these be
you.
the
Jesus
days."
has to have
Jesus
faith
at
and
the
be
time
patient.
when
Would
he's
you just
written and
listen?
talking and in the moment is saying to them, "These
I
be
wish
the
you
days of
would.
vengeance, in which all things written shall be fulfilled." If we're to believe Jesus, all the things that were written according to their scripture, the scriptures of time, the Tanakh, all had to be fulfilled during the time of Jesus. During that time, all the fulfillment was going to come. James
But
understood
Jesus'
that and
time
told the
isn't
rich
over
men to
yet.
go. James was understanding and telling the rich men, "Go to now. Weep and howl for the treasures you've heaped up for the last days," because they were in the last days. They were all under this understanding that what was coming was very soon. It was not something coming out 2,000 years after even the preaching of the Olivet Discourse. Jesus said, "This generation shall not pass till all these things be fulfilled," referring to the destruction of the city, the destruction of the temple, the wrath upon Israel. All of it had to come to pass quickly, according to what Jesus had said. None of the stuff that I'm claiming here is off of my own basis of logic. It's based off of reasoning what Jesus' logic is. The logic that Jesus is giving is that that temple, when you see it destroyed, right, there will be no stone left upon another. When me reasoning that there's no temple today, that leads me to understand that Jesus was true in what he said, right? If I'm going to take the story as it is, we have to consider that when Jesus said, "These be the days of vengeance," that those then, that they're living in are the days of vengeance, not today. When John says that he's their brother and companion in tribulation, he was in the tribulation, not us today. It's something we have to it's called historical particularism, and we have to find our way in it. And apparently the guest is going to leave. That's okay. He can leave if he wants, I guess, if anyone else wants to come up. But I think he understands that
Did he leave?
we're not. Yeah, he left. Yeah, he's not going to deal with it. He obviously, I think, he's in like.
Jake,
he's
come
under
up.
the
Come up.
assumption
Let's see what you got.
that He knows too much. So
You can barely hear you, Tobias. I mean, I can hear you, but we're
To be honest, yeah, you're a little low.
you're the quietest one in the whole bunch. You need to be the loudest one.
yeah, I try not to be too loud though.
Oh, he's probably got a
That's
baby.
true.
I used to be very quiet too, and then I had to
Yeah.
I had to outspeak Chris.
It sounded loud in the beginning.
That's weird. What's going on here?
Put your headphone
Used to,
next to
you
your
didn't
mouth.
get your
I see
dope
what's
guy.
going on. Hold on, I see now. Yeah.
Give me a testing.
Testing.
Testing California.
Okay, this might be a little loud. Is that a little better?
That's better.
Better.
That's coming out of my toner now. Okay.
There we go.
Big yelling.
Okay, dude. Sounds good. Sounds good. All right, so we got a new guest. We got Cecil Cross coming up. Cecil.
Go ahead, host, do your thing.
Cecil, I think Cecil's preterist though. Cecil's preterist, I'm pretty sure.
I think I've ever met Cecil. Nice to
Hey,
meet you,
wow,
Cecil.
this is like a first for me because it used to be you had to have so many followers to be able to join a conversation like this. So
Hmm.
I didn't know that. I didn't even know that that would be an option. So
Yeah, well,
Used to
welcome
be
live, man.
1,000.
yeah, I appreciate it. Yeah, I was trying to say while I was just texting it that there in the comments that preterism was pretty much the eschatology of the church until the 1800s, and there were some pastors who started pushing the end of the world eschatology, and Revelation is for their time. I mean, in the 1800s, there were massive amounts of people who would turn around and sell everything they had, went up to mountaintops, waited for the Lord to return because somebody did all the calculations, and that's been going over 200 years now, over and over and over. And the one thing we can all be sure of is Jesus Christ is returning for everyone individually, at least, because we all, the day of the Lord will come for each of us eventually. Um, yeah, but I've kind of put my, right now you hear all the people debating pre-trib, post-trib, mid-trib, all of that, and it's just kind of, even the whole concept of the modern day concept of the rapture, I kind of call into question. The resurrection is one thing, but the way people have latched onto it, the whole idea of two shall be in the field and one shall be left behind, the other taken. Well, the one that was taken violently. Not the one that was left behind was the one that was spared. Pray that you won't be pregnant or nursing or anything like that. Because those times will be, terrible. People will cry for the mountains to fall on them and hide them. But I'm just saying that we've got the opposite idea of what all that means. Was it Matthew 24 or was it Mark 11? I'm trying to remember which chapter that Jesus spoke about the destruction of the temple. And I mean, he goes into detail and said, "Hey, even the sailors know what the weather's going to be like because in morning, sailors warning and all that." And he warned them. He said, they asked him, "Hey, well, Master, when will this all take place? How shall we know?" And he tells them, "This generation shall not pass away until all these things be fulfilled." And that was 40 years later that the temple fell, and there were 7 years. There was the desolation of the temple that was done by the general who came in and destroyed the temple. But some people say that he sacrificed a pig on the altar and all this.
I believe that was Titus. I believe it was Titus.
Titus, yeah. So. I'm just saying that, all these, there were the 3.5 years before and 3.5 years after, there was a 7-year period of time, that, the whole of Israel was laid under siege. The temple was destroyed. Josephus wrote about it. And if I'm not mistaken, I think in the writings of Josephus, it's even mentioned, he mentions about the Lord Almighty coming in the clouds, that they heard the sound of chariots in the clouds.
A supernatural apparition as well. Tacitus has
yeah,
spoken of.
So
allegorically they try to claim it's about Augustus Caesar, but it seems too much of an accuracy when he talks about like the temple and everything. It seems to render exactly what Josephus is talking about too. So it's odd.
Yeah, preterism has kind of been taken a back seat for the last couple of hundred years, but it was the accepted eschatology of the church for thousands of years, and Yep.
It is interesting. The change in church doctrine has been very drastic, even as of late, too. We're seeing a lot more of like the secular progressive movement start to involve itself in the futurist churches, and a lot of the changes there are starting to become more divisive. So it's kind of interesting to see this all develop. I didn't mean to interrupt whoever it was that was going to.
Oh no. And I want to promote a book from 200 years ago written by Farrar called "The Bible, Its Supremacy and Meaning." I think I
That was weird.
He was cut out for a second. I was going to look up that book real quick and see if I could post it on the background. As soon as he comes back, I'll look at it. I think he's going to look it up real quick. It might be why he's away. But I'm definitely going to look into it. Yeah, go right ahead.
What I was going to say was when he said about the mariners and the storm, it was like Jesus said, "You know how the mariners can tell that a storm is coming by the clouds. How do you not see that the end is coming near?" Because you had Israel and you had Rome, and there were the mixed clay, the mixed pot. It's as was prophesied.
Well, at least you're getting onto a start by the mixed clay and the mixed pot, by knowing the understanding of who was the clay and who was the iron. Do you understand who the iron was?
It was Rome.
Yeah, correct. Good job. Yeah, hell yeah, you're doing good.
Yeah, because it doesn't actually explicitly say, I don't think, that it is Rome when it talks about the
Yeah,
iron
but-
and the iron mixed with clay, but it has to be inferred because when you look at the previous empires, when it's actually telling you the symbols of the animals that he's seeing in the dream as being Babylon, Medo-Persia,
Correct.
and Greece, as a historian, you have to look back and infer, okay, so the iron and iron mixed with clay has to be Rome. You know, that's the next progression of the empire that swallowed up the empires previous. It's part of that beast system that was identified in the document. I always thought that was one of the more interesting books from the Old Testament to me was Daniel. That was one that always had me thrown for a loop. Still kind of does, because the scholarly teaching behind it is not as clear to me as to like its origins.
But yeah, like it had to be Rome, because even Caiaphas, who was the high priest at the time, said those things that like if they did not give up Jesus, then it would have been Rome that took over them. And him being the high priest, he didn't realize he was prophesying. Like that says it in the Bible.
That's it. If anybody wants to study the how the Old Testament was canonized in the Council of Jamnia around 70 A.D. As a matter of fact, it was a Jewish council that basically determined the canon of the Old Testament, and then of course the is it the Nicene Council or the Council of Trent? I always get it confused. 300 A.D.
That's Nicaea, yep.
Nicene Council determined the composition of the books in the New Testament, and I kind of texted in the comments. I said that Revelation was anti-legomena, which means it was one of the disputed books. I think a couple of the letters of John, like 2nd and 3rd John, were disputed, and they were all voted on in Revelation, and a handful of those minor letters barely made it into the canon. I mean, so Revelation has always kind of bothered me a little bit because the style is not typical of the style of the other New Testament writers, and it borrowed so heavily from Daniel that I just I'm not necessarily, I don't necessarily regard it as a salvational gospel type of book. It's just its own animal, so to speak. It's just unique. It is like the Book of Daniel.
You're fine because there's a lot of people who will take it as esoterics or Gnosticism or anything that could go amongst those minds of like raising a frequency. There's a lot of people who would take it as that. So,
right. If that being said, you could go look at, you've got Jude, I think, that quotes from the Book of Enoch. Okay? Well, the Book of Enoch is not in our canonized Bible, but it is the first book of the Ethiopian Bible. If you go find an Ethiopian Bible, you'll see the Book of Enoch before you see the Book of Genesis.
Yeah, and you'll get a race of people who will tell you that's not canonization.
So, I know. I'm just what I'm saying is that you got somebody in the New Testament, in an accepted canonized book in the New Testament, literally quoting from the Book of Enoch, and when they talk about the angels being locked away in dungeons and whatnot.
The same thing comes in another book where the hen close her eggs. I forgot what it's called.
Yeah, I thought there's a. I mean, it's like the books of the Apocrypha. The Apocrypha, those are considered historical in nature. They fill that gap between the Old Testament and the New, but I don't think they're not necessarily required for our salvation and full understanding. But no, it's just there's a lot to be learned. But I highly recommend that book, as old as it is. That it's very, very scholarly in nature. So
just follow the Bible.
For sure, yeah. Oh yeah.
Follow anything.
But hey, it's been good, guys. I got to get on another call. I'm gonna save your feed off so I can come at it another time. Appreciate
You take
the time.
care, man.
I appreciate the
You
source, man.
too.
I'm definitely going to be looking into that, and definitely add me
Yeah,
on here, dude. Make sure follow me. I'd definitely like to have more
I will
conversations
do.
with you
I will
in the
do that.
future.
Appreciate it.
Sounds good, man. Have a good
So
night.
take care, brother.
Take care.
Okay, so when it comes to the Book of Enoch, and I'm going to be honest, I just heard this from a scholar, and that is that the Book of Enoch actually came after the destruction of the temple. It's actually taking its inspiration from Revelation, and then it's making a fan fiction of Enoch because we didn't know what the heck happened to Enoch. It's
Well, yeah,
such a
you would
weird
have to
thing that God
understand
just
that.
took him.
That's a book that was made so many times ago, and how can you expect that to be passed down when a lot of other books at the time were not passed down with infringements?
I mean, how do you expect Enoch to be passed down if Enoch was before the flood? Like, who wrote that and
Well,
who
yeah, I'm saying
passed it?
with infringements. So
Yeah.
uh, you take it as you see it, I guess. If it helps you be a better person, by all means, be a better person.
But my point is that the Book of Enoch was inspired by Revelation, not the other way around. Revelation wasn't inspired, or Jude wasn't even inspired by Enoch either.
Mm,
That's what I'm saying.
I'm
If
not
you
so
want to disagree,
sure.
that's cool.
This
That's
is
fine.
interesting.
I mean,
You guys
in
want to
the
discuss
grand
this, or you
scale of
think
things,
they?
it's
Is this something you
You
think
think
you want to
Jude-
just
no.
leave and let be?
I don't think it matters much because that temple is still destroyed, it's still never rebuilt. You
Well,
know,
Yeah.
I
What are you gonna say,
following
Coach?
what Jesus said.
Do you think Jude was the quote that's in Jude was written before Enoch, and Enoch copied it? Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying. Yeah.
Okay.
Because you do have older textures, right? Are
Like
they
what?
not? Well, you got like Deuteronomy, you got Job.
Those are from their time period, or as some people would say, it was during the time of Josiah.
Which is based on a time period, but I don't know if we have like an actual historical value on when they were written.
We know
Yeah,
that
I
there's.
mean, I have-
We only know that there are certain claims of certain shifts in
Yeah,
the social dynamics, but
much.
we don't understand a lot of the origins of them. We can only speculate on that. Like Josiah's reforms, it was a resistance against the. I think it was resistance against the Babylonian exile and an attempt to unify the northern regions left unoccupied by from the Babylonians and kind of resist them in terms of a like cultural identity and kind of getting forced a hegemony upon them. It's kind of interesting because before that, there's a lot of evidence of a lot of the Semitic people worshiping different gods other than Yahweh. But after
Well, when you
Josiah,
put it
it's
like
Yahweh
that-
exclusive.
Well, when you put it like that, that gives a different perspective to me.
Well, it's always. I think that that's inevitably going to be part of an evolution of thought, but no one can really contrive the origin of that
Okay.
evolution of thought, right? So that's really the discussion I think that could be had is like, okay, we can talk about it from an anthropological standpoint that, yeah, this could be a response to the situation of the Babylonians, but that's going to be a claim from scholars because that's all the evidence they have to go by.
Okay, I see.
Yeah.
But it could be happening before that, and we have to figure out and speculate what evidence we could choose or at least see from burials or other places to like ascertain that
That makes
conclusion.
sense. That makes sense.
So
I
that's
mean,
the
at least when
established
it comes-
claim is Josiah's the Yahweh only exclusionary period, and before then it was worshiping other gods and doing other things,
Well,
henotheistically, I guess you could say.
You mind if I take a sideways turn?
Of course, always.
So
Always turn
about the
sideways.
like, it's always been across me like the new covenant God and the old covenant God and the old pantheon with the Yahweh and all that, and how El Elyon literally gave Yahweh his portion to the Israelis. So, what exactly is going on right there?
That's I think still up for discussion because it's a.
That's what I'm saying. Like, I
It's
don't
a syncretism
really
of
know.
Canaanite mythology with Semitic traditions and
So
the stories
yeah,
that
like
describes
who
in
was
the
who was
Sym-
Jesus really praying to?
Right. I mean, from what we understand, people are going to say Yahweh, right?
Yeah, but I wouldn't say. I would say El Elyon.
But yeah, Yahweh and Elyon is supposedly the same being, at least especially during King Josiah's time.
Well, we certainly know they were fused, right? Because their identity
Yes.
is definitely fused in for sure. Like the
But
father
we
time
get the
concept
same.
from
We get
El
the
is
same
so very
accusation
predominant.
and the same likewise, where he was saying, "I am like him, and I am one." So we have a lot of I am ones going on with the gods.
Hmm. Yeah, this is it's part of the evolution of the thought of God, I think, too. I think there's something to be said
Yeah.
about that. Like, before it was like most of the societies were polytheistic, and many of the polytheistic gods had some type of an attribute to nature. You know, you had the god
Are
of
we
the sea
having
or the
an
god of the sky,
ego?
but
Are we having an ego temper?
maybe. I don't know.
Maybe we're having an ego temper.
It's interesting to think about. I mean, there's been changes in the thought of God all the way throughout time, but during the time of Josiah, it was definitely one of the first moments in human history that they decided, yeah, we are one God and one God only. And from that point on, we know that the Jews had stuck with that all the way up through.
And you know what? I would say that there's something to that when all the other Canaan beliefs and religions have fell apart, fell away, and the only one that is left standing is Yahweh.
Right, because you have this like really strange diffusion of people at the time when the Egyptian kind of hegemonic control over the land kind of pulls away in 1200, and the Semitic people who were called the Shasu, that they were identified as the Shasu by the Egyptians, were chased out of the hegemonic land into the Seir Mountains. We know that they fled from the Seir Mountains from evidence, archaeological evidence, to the north and south, and that's how we get a lot of different mythologies kind of deriving from that region, and a lot of the flood myths being attributed to a lot of the local flooding of the areas. They have a lot of, really, if you go to the Seir region, there's a lot of attributes to it that explain, I think, a lot more about the identity of the Old Testament and the people living there at the time, why they chose to choose Yahweh as the one God, and it seems like a whole other world to live in, you know. It's something I still am touching on. I've only like read some people talk about this and listened to people talk about this on other podcasts. I've been reading about it, trying to figure out how the heck you go through two different exilic periods and still come out like one identity, because many people don't do that. There's a lot of places that got wiped out.
I mean, what I would say is that when it comes to Elyon, El Shaddai, El just meant God, and El Shaddai meaning the Most High God. God just not being really a name. This goes back to Exodus when Moses spoke to God, and God said, "I am who I am." He tried
But there
giving.
also is a part where he literally breaks off the portion and gives Yahweh a portion.
I can't remember
Yeah,
where that's
well,
from.
that
Is
would
that,
be
I
like
think that's
in
in
the old
the
Canaanite
Ugaritic
religion,
Cycles,
right?
I think. I think that's
Well,
in
that's the
there.
Canaanite pantheon.
Yeah, but that's what I'm saying is that like he tried to give his name, they would not accept it. So he's like, okay, I was not recognized by this name, but you can call me Yahweh, and that's when this new God shows up in the Canaan region. Is really the old God who was not accepted by his name.
But that would break barriers, because how could the God of all gods be broken down? Only if he broke it down himself and gave that broken down self his rule.
No, my point would be that he did not break himself down. He tried to give his name. They did not accept it, and he's like, okay, and then you're gonna have to
Okay, I see what
accept
you're
me
saying.
as Yahweh.
Yeah, I've heard that
You're gonna have to
explanation
I
accept
see what
me
you're
as
saying. I see what you're saying.
Remember also that a lot of these writings are coming from different time periods, and also probably from the Northern Kingdom. You have one people, they're writing something, and then the Southern Kingdom's writing another thing, and then these documents end up getting fused together. I know.
Is it a mix of gods?
Yeah, I'm sure you've heard of the JPD theory, right?
I haven't actually.
You
I have.
haven't? Okay, so
No.
there is 4 source texts in the first 5 books in the Torah. So, Cecil, can you mute?
Say that again.
Can you mute for a second?
Can you move real quick? You got some, you have some background noise.
Oh
for
yeah,
sure.
yeah. Let me mute. Hold on a second.
You're
Thank
okay.
you.
Yeah, it's the Deuteronomic edit. It's the priestly edit. It's the Josiah edit. And what else?
There's the
Coach?
priestly. There's the priestly Deuteronomy, the Yahwist, and the Elohimist, or the Yahweh is Elohim. What's the fourth one?
I'm trying to remember what the fourth one was. I'm familiar with the aspect of
Josiah.
Yahwism through Josiah.
No, it's not. It's not Josiah. It's
You're talking about the Pantheon?
No, we're talking about the various
It's called
editors.
the documentary hypothesis. So it's a Yahwist. One second, I'll get it. Let me look it up. Really
My
quick.
father and I discussed this too because he was reading a lot of Stavrakopoulos' work.
Yahwist is the J source. Yahwist is the J source. Elohist is the E source. Then the priestly source, and then the Deuteronomy source. So that's the D source. So those make up the four sources, and then they had a redactor get all these four sources together, and then they made it mesh. That's why when you read the Old Testament, you see like Genesis 1 and 2, like two stories, kind of like.
Yeah, God created
not
man
flowing
and
too
woman,
well.
and then God created man and then created woman.
So you're talking about a
Right.
mix of stories that are coming into one.
Right. So they had some kind of redactor come up with a story. Like a lot of the people believe that Isaac didn't survive. That Abraham unalived him because one of the sources ends. Like it just ends with him not coming back. And then another source came and added a section. You know.
Oh.
So yeah. So like. Take a look at that. It's called the documentary hypothesis. It's a JEPD theory.
Let me write that down. Documentary hypothesis. Okay, I got you.
I'm not saying that I agree with it. I'm just saying that I know of it, and
No, you're fine, brother.
I
Ask
get,
questions as much as you want.
and I get it. It's like how they say that child sacrifices are made to Yahweh, and then later on it says, "Oh no, we mean for the priesthood." But at the same time, they're talking about child sacrifices along with the goats and and the oxen. It's like, oh, you will give the priest your first of the oxen, your first of the goats, and your firstborn child.
Do you mind if I have a second to like speak something real quick?
Go ahead.
Because I see a lot of lives where people say that, oh, you worship the God of the Bible and he's with X, Y, and Z. But then when I'm not trying to look for an excuse for my God, but I look to the Pantheon and I look for Yahweh being the God of war in the Old Testament, and they say, oh, Jesus is that God. But in the other sense, he's representing El Elyon, the Most High God. So the God that they're representing is Yahweh, the God of war, and he's the one that everyone's prolonging to or holding on to as the God of Constantine, Cortez, and Manifest Destiny, and all of these attributes that go towards freaking, you know what I'm talking about. I'm not going to say the word, but we know it because I don't want to get Tobias' live banned. But
Yeah,
we know what we're talking about.
Basically, excusing their
Yeah. So
mass.
so I'm saying
growth.
the God of that time was Yahweh, and X, Y, and Z did that. But that's a different pantheon God, and I think people are underestimating that people do people things. So
It's also forgetting.
how can we blame a God for people doing people things when at the same time we're representing, not even representing, we're pointing to something for an act of motivation. So is it really Yahweh, or is it really that, or is it just humans being humans?
You can't blame God for the Inquisition.
That's what I'm saying. Like, how can you get what I'm saying? And even if we put Yahweh as the pantheon, the God of war, how can we blame that for humans acting on humans being humans?
Or if anything, it says more about the people at the time, why they're identifying with a god who's known for raiding, pillaging, and is the storm god of the southern Levantine. I
And
think
we're
at
not
the
going to
time,
even
it tells a lot
underestimate
more
that,
about
yeah.
people who are like nomadic people, like the Shasu were, who would have been attributed, according to the Egyptians, as worshiping this identity of Yahweh, living in the region of the Seir Mountains. They understood these people did believe in Yahweh, that they did attribute Yahweh to an equivalent of Set, which was the god of the Black Desert, the god of the foreigners, if you will. and that they were attributing this evil god to the Shasu, these nomadic people who believed in raiding and pillaging at the time. This makes a lot more sense too, that when Semitic people later on, after being attributed by other empires as being war lovers and believers in an evil god, would settle down after becoming more sedentary and growing their food and living on land, that they would attribute themselves more to a father time figure in a different evolved state of understanding God and worshiping God. There's no need for a war-loving God if you're trying to explain God in a way of wisdom or intellectual capacity, because most of these warrior gods were not known for being smart, or at least a high intellectual capacity as being a creator.
Yeah, so that's what I'm saying. They were choosing their active god of war
Right.
to spread their god of war.
This doesn't mean that this is a wholehearted, like, uniform thing. It's not like it's a monolith.
Yeah,
it just means that there were
exactly.
people that were believing in the Canaanite mythology at the time, and they were worshiping two other deities in the Canaanite mythology.
Exactly.
Which is
So I get a lot of people that come on here that talk about your god did this, your god did that, but I don't think they understand the pantheon to what happened.
right. The story of God seems like he didn't want them to worship these other gods at all. Frankly, he didn't want them to worship on the altars and idols. But I can't really figure that in either. It's kind of interesting of a question.
Factor in the fact that there is a God. Yeah, I'm not sure where all of you lie in your theology and your faith and whatnot, but factor in that God has protected and looked over a lineage that goes all the way from Adam to Christ. Okay, and so now when God, Abraham and all his descendants and his forefathers, was there anything special about them? I mean, what I'm saying is that some people, there are some theories that say that Adam and Eve in Genesis is really just a description of the lineage of the Jewish people, from Adam all the way to Christ. That it's not necessarily indicative of the whole world, because who did Cain fear when he left when he was thrown out of the garden and said, "Hey, I'm afraid for my life. Other people will see me and kill me." Like, what? What was that about? So with that in mind, God
Try to use unalive.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I forget it most of the time too. I feel bad.
So sorry about that.
If it gets the live band, I don't care.
Yeah. No.
I'll come
With
back,
that
I
in
promise.
mind, God has said about sort of protecting. It's sort of like scoring a channel in the earth from one point to the ocean, so that the water has a path. He's made a path all the way to Christ, and he's through miracles and grace and whatnot. He was David a righteous man? No, not. I mean, he had faith, but he did a lot of unrighteous things. Same thing with Solomon, and you just go down the line. Nobody was perfect all the way down, through the Old Testament to Christ. But the whole idea of all the other gods. One thing it seems like man has always done is they've taken some attribute of the one true God, and they put it into some physical form that they can control. Okay, whether it's the balls or the Asherah poles or whatever was going on in the Middle East at that time, they wanted a God that they could control. And the one thing about the God of Israel, well, he wasn't very controllable, and that was kind of a rough. And the priests and the rulers of Israel found that probably kind of difficult too, because they were being led by a God that they had no control of, and either they did what he wanted and they were blessed, or they didn't and they weren't blessed. So
Seems like a masquerade.
So all these different, I've always kind of wrestled with the whole Abraham and Isaac thing. I mean, what father who spent 100 years trying to have a child would turn around and say, "Sure, I'll go sacrifice the son you spent 100 years giving me," and I definitely would be asking for other forms of identity from God. I need 3 forms of identification or something before I go do something like that. But and that's knowing everything today. I mean, imagine what he was going through back then. So
Yeah, you're good. That's
I mean,
understandable.
when God gives you the child himself, like your wife is barren, she can't have kids. He gives you the child himself. Like that's a miracle. And then he says that with that child, he's going to raise up a nation. When he tells you to sacrifice that child, he's capable of stuff. He's already capable of making a kid come out of a barren woman. He might as well just be able to raise him back up from the dead because he said
I agree.
Someone's alarm's going off.
Yeah.
It was saying there was inactivity. It was going to shut down my live because I hadn't touched my mouse in 5 minutes.
No.
Crazy, I know.
But I mean,
Hey, everybody, let's keep tapping the live. Let's keep the host and active. Come on, let's tap the live.
Appreciate
but yeah,
it, y'all.
like if you want to know my theology about all of this, is that God created Adam and Eve. They listened to Satan. They were in sin. It sinned the world. God could not mix himself with the sin of the world. He cannot mix himself with what he did not command. Like, I did not create sin. I did not command you to follow someone else as your father when I am your father. So, what you then have is Satan and his angels now control the fertile land, the land that he was working on. And so, what
You're not talking
have,
about the Fertile Crescent, are you?
I am talking about the Fertile Crescent.
Then I would disagree with you on that.
In what way?
Because you're thinking that an ice age happened and the Fertile Crescent will happen, and that's the exact spot of the new age of humanism, which is completely wrong.
What do you mean?
Do you know what the Fertile Crescent means, brother?
It means that it was the area that had trees, had food, and everywhere else was kind of desolate.
You got an idea, but that's not truly correct. That was supposed to be the Fertile Crescent of the Ice Age, was to be the only inhabitable zone after the Ice Age.
Yeah, exactly.
So
No,
you
I
can't.
get what
Are
you're
you
saying.
basing Adam and Eve off of that exact idea?
Yeah.
No, that's completely wrong.
All right.
But
Well, then
that's your opinion, which is respectable. So I'll respect that. Go ahead and go on what you're going.
So that area of land was a land that God was taking care of from the beginning, and that essentially, when the world came into sin, He could not be a part of it, but He made a group of people His people, and He was starting to take care of the land Himself again because He was coming back into the world that He was separated from. This is why, like in the Canaan mythology, Elyon, being the most high god, was also the most silent god in their pantheon. It really coincides with Genesis and stuff.
It only coincides if you choose that dogma.
Yeah,
But there's other dogmas that don't coincide with that. So if you choose that, then that's your proficient dogma. Like you only choose that. So that's how you're gonna see it. But there's other people who understand that Adam and Eve was not sex in the sin. It was not a fruit in the garden. It was a creation of Israel and the covenant. So there's many other templates you can go with.
Yeah.
Which I'm not saying you could believe what you want and that your freedom to choose that. And I'm not going to say you're wrong or you're right because that's your freedom of choice. But there's many other aspects that say that you're wrong and you're right.
Yeah, I get you.
Keep in mind that.
I have a question for.
Hold on, coach.
Yeah, I have a
Coach
question for Cherubi. So Cherubi, when you read Revelation 21 and you see heaven and earth being done away with, and then a new heaven and earth is coming, what do you attribute the heaven and earth there to?
The one being destroyed or the one that comes out of heaven?
Uh, we'll go with the one that's destroyed.
That heaven and earth being that temple and that area.
Okay.
That place being the same place that Jacob laid his head and saw the ladder from heaven to earth, where the angels were going up and down it.
Okay. So so Jacob is the beginning of
He's a creationist.
Yeah, I think he is a creationist. But okay. So do you think that
I'm not a creationist. I do believe that the earth is a billion years old. I do believe in
You can't do that
evolution.
if you just said Adam and Eve connected as that. Like, come on.
I don't know what's going on with Adam and Eve. I don't know if that is a vision from someone who was
That's
more
fine.
honest and they had a
That's fine,
dream,
brother.
and that's how they saw it.
If you're sideways about the creation, that's fine. But I'm gonna let Coach take over.
All right.
Go ahead, Coach.
So if heaven and earth is the temple and the old covenant system, which is what I believe it to be, then why do you think that the creation of heaven and earth in Genesis is the literal planet and universe?
That's kind of hard to say because, quite honestly, in Revelation, they go into New Jerusalem and they have the tree of life, don't they?
Right. So in the new Jerusalem, right, it's contrasting between the old Jerusalem. So in the old Jerusalem, they were disconnected from God, separated. Death and sin reigned. They could not be in union with God. In the new Jerusalem, we see the difference. We see the opposite, right? They're connected with God. There's no longer pain and suffering, no crying. And in this new Jerusalem, the 12 apostles are its foundational stones. And so what we're seeing is a compare and contrast, right? Old Jerusalem, right? Separation, sin, right?
Yes.
No connection to God. New Jerusalem, connected to God, right? Foundations of the apostles. Jesus is the cornerstone, right? So they're showing the two covenantal differences, right? The old covenant system comparing to the new covenant. And then so the new heaven and earth is the new covenant with Jesus reigning. And in the old covenant, you had the Mosaic covenant leading the way. But in that there was sin and separation and no. So since that's how I see Revelation 21, now I go back to the beginning of the book, right? And I see the creation of a heaven and earth. And I'm like, well, do I have to take this literal? Or am I going to take it the same way I took Revelation 21? And my answer is I'm going to take it the same way. I'm going to stay consistent, right? So the heavens and earth that are created in the Bible are not talking about like the literal planet. It's talking about covenantal worlds. So the heaven and earth created in Genesis is a covenantal world between God and Israel, and this covenantal world is based on the laws that were given in Mount Sinai, right? The temple system, the sacrificial system, the priests, the kings, right? All these things are part of that old covenantal world, and that old covenantal world was going to pass away, right? Jesus was saying, "Heaven and earth is going to pass away." So that old covenantal world passes away in 70 A.D. and the new covenant world comes into completion or whatever.
Yes, but it's strange that the new covenant also says that there will be no death and there's no tears. That sounds more like a heavenly New Jerusalem, not a physical New Jerusalem.
Doesn't that make more sense?
What does Jesus say to the woman at the well? What does he say?
He said that there would be no temple nor mountain, that you would have to pray to God. You would pray to God.
Doesn't that make sense to you?
There would be no marriage and giving of marriage, basically, in heaven. So you're not going to.
No, that's what he. That's what he said to the Pharisees.
Which man will be my husband?
Well, wait, hold on. He also told his disciples that there would be a place where you would, like they said with the woman in the temple, and they said, flesh and blood cannot inherit the earth. Does that not alone tell you flesh and blood cannot inherit?
No, he said flesh and blood cannot inherit the kingdom of God.
Okay, so what's the kingdom of God?
It's New Jerusalem in heaven.
What's your New Jerusalem that you just said?
New
You just said it.
Jerusalem in
You
heaven.
just said it. No, you just said it.
Yeah, so the kingdom of God is righteousness, peace, and joy, according to Paul. And then you have, it says that the kingdom of God is not coming with observation, nor will they say, here it is or there it is. My kingdom is not of this world, it's not of this realm. So the kingdom of God is a spiritual place. I do agree with you there. Now, when we go to Revelation, right, it says that he made us into a kingdom and priests, right? And we shall rule on earth in Revelation 5, right? They shall rule on earth. So there is an earthly connection to it. We are that. Well, not we. We could debate whether we are still or not, but they were definitely the earthly connection to the New Jerusalem, to the new heaven and earth. So those people that were living at that time were the kings, right, that ruled on earth.
So what did Jesus say to the thief on the cross?
So what I want you to understand is not ruling the planet, okay? They ruled God's kingdom. So the apostles ruled God's kingdoms while they were on the earth. They were the kings. They were the rulers of that kingdom.
So if I brought up Revelation earlier in the fact that they considered it anti-legomena, that it was a disputed book, because look how it's almost, Christ is preaching a spiritual kingdom, his whole ministry, and it's almost like somebody took everything and then turned around and said, well, we still want a stake. It's like when the disciples were debating with each other, who shall be great? Lord, can I be by your side? Can I sit at your left hand and right hand? And all of this, and they were all just concerned about the hierarchy and who was going to be in charge. And almost looks like Revelation kind of, 12 apostles, they're all pillars, and you've all got your little, fiefdom here, so to speak. I mean, it's almost a refocus back into a physical world when that is not what Christ came and taught. That that God is spirit, the Father is spirit. He said to the thief on the cross, surely today you will be with me in paradise. Now, and then surely a little bit later we're all going to go down and have a physical world and eat and have a picnic. I mean, that's not what he said. I mean, in paradise, it's heaven that is not bound. We're not bound by the physics of this universe, because this is a created universe. We are now, I mean, it's a different. It's an unlimited. It's a boundless existence. Is how I see it. And the fact that people suddenly want to go back to I want my they want something physical back. Now he did say, hey, I go to prepare for you. In my Father's house are many rooms, and I go to prepare for you for that. But it's still showing the disciples that we're that everyone's going to have a place in heaven. It's not this hierarchy that I think Revelation tries to paint. But yep.
I mean, to speak on that, well, first to speak on what Coach Peter was saying, I don't think that the new covenant was something that is on earth. Earth not being the actual word, it would be land, and that land was destroyed. That temple was destroyed. They had a new land and a new temple in heaven, a new Jerusalem in heaven. It's not talking about a physical earth. And even Jesus said it's not a physical earth, it's a spiritual earth, as we already discussed here. But to talk on about that hierarchy, it's more like, because even Jesus said, you will have your reward in heaven, but everyone will have God from the greater to the least. So it's not saying that the apostles are greater because they have pillars, but that they are remembered for what they did on their time on earth. But they are all equals, like children. They're not one greater than the other.
Yeah. The only thing is, when we look at what verse was I going to bring up? I just went blank. But they were waiting, right, to be removed from the body. And when I say the body, I'm not talking about like their own physical bodies.
I would go with they're being removed like a physical yet spiritual body. You had the Jewish nation, and they were the circumcision. The Christians were the circumcision from that part. God took them. God took that flesh from the Jewish people to bring it into heaven.
Right. So I don't.
It's kind of beautiful.
I don't think it was like the removal of their actual skin.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. But
I think it's the removal of the old covenant body. So the old covenant body passes away, and now once the old covenant body passes away, then the new covenant body is all that's left, right? So that's what they were waiting for. In 2 Corinthians 6, that's what I was remembering. I think it's verse 16. Paul addresses the Corinthians, and he tells them that they are the new temple, right? And God is dwelling with them while they're literally alive. So they were already experiencing the indwelling of God, according to 2 Corinthians 6:16.
Can I explain on that?
Go ahead.
Well, they had just been made sinless by Jesus Christ. They had received the Holy Spirit. Their body is a temple for God. And by saying that they were the temple, they were basically blaspheming the Herod's temple. But that they, in a sense, are the temple of God. And if they were to sin, that temple is now filled with sin, and the Holy Spirit would leave them because it's no longer holy.
Now, I agree with that.
Like God was in them. God was in them in that they had the Holy Spirit in them.
Right. So I agree with that. But what I'm saying is that this was not just a wait till you unalive thing. It was a present reality for the Christians.
Except, I don't know. I don't see how that would work if the new covenant means no death, no tears. They would have no sun, no moon in heaven because God is their light and God is in them, and that would be a forever kingdom.
Yeah, but that's not literal. No sun and moon. It's talking about the king, the leadership of Israel. So they would no longer need a king or a high priest or anything like that. So
true. That kind of goes back to like what is it with before King Saul? God is like, I don't want you guys to have a king. I'm your king.
Right.
And then they were like arguing, like, no, we want a king. It's like, oh dang, that king is gonna do such horrible things to you, you whores.
They wanted to be like the other kingdoms around them. They wanted to. They saw these other ones that had rulers that led them into battle. And they were rich, and they said, "We want a king," and of course, prior to that, God ruled them with judges for a period of time. But yeah, He gave them what they wanted, and it didn't turn out too well.
Here's a question.
Go ahead.
Is the kingdom of God present during the apostles' lifetime?
Yes.
Jesus
said that. The
Okay,
kingdom
now,
of God is here. It is among
what
you.
is Jesus reigning? Okay, what is Jesus reigning if it's not a kingdom? How is he reigning?
How do you mean? I mean,
because if he's not, if Jesus is, if there's no kingdom yet, right? What is he reigning until he can give the kingdom back to his Father, right? For he must reign until all his enemies are put under his feet. So what is he reigning of? What's he reigning? If he's not reigning over a kingdom, what is he reigning?
He's reigning over the church. He's reigning over, the king. The king. I mean, he literally said, that he was preaching the good news of the kingdom, and that the kingdom of God is near. The kingdom of God is here. I mean, and now that's where it was a stumbling block to the Jews, because they were expecting a physical Messiah to come and deliver them from the Romans, and Jesus delivered us spiritually from Satan. Okay, and so with
Yeah.
the spiritual kingdom, it's not a physical kingdom. I
I
mean,
agree with you there.
try as everybody did. I mean, from the Romans turning into the Church of Rome to the Pope and the Vatican, and everybody has tried their best to make the kingdom of God a physical kingdom on the earth, but that is not what
I'm
he
not.
intended.
I'm not doing that. But the
You know.
the point that I'm making is that, and this is where I disagree with almost all preterists, because I'm the only one that believes this, I think, or more. I don't know if there's a few others, but where I disagree with preterists is that the kingdom does not start in 70 AD. I believe the kingdom starts at the resurrection, when Jesus is given all authority in heaven and on earth. And when he's given all authority in heaven and earth, he must reign until, right, he has made all his enemies under his feet. So that reign, he's reigning over something. He has to reign over something. And I believe the kingdom, whether you can call it the church, is still the same thing, in my opinion. And he's reigning till 70 AD. And then at 70 AD, when the destruction of the temple happens, he hands over the kingdom back to his father.
My personal input, I think that
See
makes
the
a lot of
vials being
sense.
poured out. Then you
I think that makes a lot of
Sorry,
sense for him to
Trevor?
be appointed to kingdom, that he would sit on the throne, and at that point the pouring out of the Holy Spirit would occur, and then the rest of the occurrences that would go beyond that would be essentially his reign on the throne until all the enemies were put under his feet. I think that makes most sense, because it would be wouldn't it be the futurist interpretation that beyond that point he would still be on the throne, like right now, 2,000 years later, would be the case, because his enemies wouldn't have been put under his feet according to the futurist interpretation. So I'm trying
Well,
to
the
piece this
futurists
together
don't
also
even
in the
think he's
opposition. Interesting.
So the futurists,
They don't. Okay, I figured that would have
Yeah,
been the
so-
opposite
so-
position.
yeah, Tobias, they actually think that the futurists don't think that he reigns until after he comes back, right? Because they completely
right.
butcher 1 Corinthians 15, or forget about it or something. I don't know what they do with that verse, but
So why wouldn't think about this? I mean, he's living, breathing among us. He resurrects, and everybody was expecting a physical king, and they said, "Hey, I mean, he could have called 10,000 angels, and whatnot." Why? If after it's all said and done, he's just going to come back and do what the Jews thought he was going to do to begin with, which was come and basically plant himself on a throne at the temple in Jerusalem 2,000 years later or something. I mean, the whole thing was that was not, my kingdom is not of this earth. I mean, I think, what was it? Wasn't that one of the questions of Pilate?
Caiaphas.
Yeah, you're right. During the interrogation. So what I'm saying is that why would he? The whole emphasis, it's a spiritual kingdom, and he did totally the opposite of what everybody was expecting, that he would turn around and come back and do the physical king thing again. And I just don't. I don't see that as being this. I think after it's all said and done, because we've only got 4.5 billion years left before the sun goes nova. So I'm just saying that eventually, we'll all eventually, spiritually be part of heaven and with God, and Jesus. That's the whole thing. That's the big thing, is that Jesus is in control. He all authority has been placed under his feet by the Father. He whether the rest of the other 7 billion people in the world see that or not, he's in charge spiritually, and this idea that he's got to come down, I mean, even God kind of mocked those. He said, "Are you going to build? Are you going to build a temple for me? How are you going to contain me? And even there, he only allowed the Shekinah of his glory to come down into the Holy of Holies, but it wasn't. You can't build a house or a temple that's going to contain God, and I just don't see a physical sitting on the throne of Jesus, and you know, I mean,
Yeah,
that's just
I don't either.
yeah,
So,
that's just
so
that's
let me
exactly
give you
what
a new
that's what they thought. But
let
yeah,
me give you a new perspective. So you
sure.
know in Matthew 28:18 when it says that all authority has been given to Jesus says that all authority has been given unto me in heaven and on earth, right? Instead of
Yeah.
thinking of it like the planet, right, or the universe or whatever, all right, think of it as the covenant world. So before in the old covenant world, right, the rulers were the Israelite leadership, right, the high priests and the Pharisees, Sadducees, right, they were ruling the world, right, and Jesus said that those rulers, right, were that's my brother-in-law. So those rulers were going to be cast out, right? He says that the ruler of this world is going to be cast out. So in John 12, or I think it was John 12 when he said that. So he says that the ruler of the world is going to be cast down. That ruler in the world is cast down at his death, burial, and resurrection.
And who are you saying the ruler of the world is?
It was the leadership of Israel at the time.
And not Satan, who took Jesus to the mountain and showed him all the kingdom of the earth, and said, "I'll give all this to you," because he actually had the world was actually at that time under his sort of authority. He kind of won the poker game back in the garden,
Yeah.
and eventually that he was going to lose the next round at the cross.
Yeah.
So
So my view is that the Satan of the Bible is the Mosaic covenant of and its leadership and kings. So that aligns with it. Sure. They are the Satans. They are the Satan of that go against God. So that lines up. Sure. But my point was is that Jesus is taking control of the covenant world. Right. So
when did he take control of it?
in Matthew 28:18.
He took control of it at the cross when he returned,
Right.
resurrected. Okay,
Right.
I think we're on the same page. Yeah.
Yeah. So rather, because most people think of it as, oh, he's getting control of heaven and like the whole planet and the universe, and like, no, he's getting control of the covenant worlds. That he's regaining control of that covenant world, that the Israelite world, right? That's what you see in Revelation 12, right? You see the devil, Satan, losing its power, right? And now the kingdom of the world is given unto Jesus and his followers.
Yeah, because yeah, I mean, yeah,
I don't know. That sounds wrong
the
to me
imagery,
because
yeah,
what
I
you're
can
basically
understand, but yeah,
it sounds wrong to me because what you're basically saying is Satan is Yahweh.
Satan is,
Satan is the
I
adversary.
would say Yahweh, but yeah, Satan is an adversary towards God. So, or towards Israel, depending on the situation.
so when
You
you
got
talk about the
muffled.
Mosaic law being Satan, the way you put it, but I mean, so
Yeah,
are you not? I mean, even Jesus pointed to the law and said, "Not one jot or tittle. I'm not come to do away with the law, but to fulfill it." So the Mosaic law was given, and I'm talking about I'm not going to even necessarily point to all the minor little details of the law that are listed in Leviticus and Deuteronomy and whatnot, but I'm talking about the Ten Commandments and what was handed down on the mountain to Moses. You know that I mean, is that, and of course, there's even preceding that is the promise to Abraham. You know, so
so in
are
my
you
view
the God who made those promises to Abraham, who made the promises to Moses? That are you looking at him as a different God than the God the Father?
No, not necessarily, but my view of a Satan is just an adversary. So when I look at the law, right, I see it as an adversary to man to Israel, right? They cannot observe it. They're unable to keep it because they're human and they fall short. And since they fall short, it's an adversary to them. So I don't see it as a bad thing. When you see it today, right? People think of Satan as something that's evil and is out to get you, right? And he's gonna come and get you. I see Satan more as just something that's adversarial to mankind.
Well,
And
I will agree, that Satan basically is doing what God allows him to do. You know, what did it say that? Did it say that God sent an evil spirit into Paul, and he tried to? I'm talking about Saul, and he tried to pin David to the wall with a spear. Now, was it Satan that put the evil spirit into Saul to do that? No, it came from God. I mean, it was Satan doesn't have. I mean, he doesn't have the power that that everybody attributes to him. I mean, look at the limitations he had in Job. He literally presented himself before God almost like a
So
regular basis.
would those limitations be like your own being? Because when you're talking about Job, those are all in the counsel of God. And it wasn't no Satan in that council. It was only the council of those who are adversary.
Well, he said, Satan came with the other sons of was it the sons of God, and presented himself,
Yeah, but it was a
and
divine
God said,
council. It
what have you
wasn't
been
no
up to?
Satan. It was
What's
no
that?
Satan. It was a divine council. And that was a part of that. He was just a lesser angel. It wasn't like he was like the devil as you know it. It was just a different council.
Well,
And that's Old Testament. And you
and
only see a
I
devil.
understand that, but it was a council who basically, it was almost, he was the devil's advocate, literally, because he was the devil, and so he would take the opposite stance. God said, "Hey, what do you think of my servant Job?" And Satan turned to him and said, "Well, he's only doing all that because you give him everything he needs,
Well,
and
that
you've
was a
never."
council. Oh God, it's like a big story for him. But at the end of the day, it was still the counsel of God testing the counsel of God.
When you say counsel, I somehow get a plurality. Or are you talking about the demeanor? He was testing
Well, there was
the
no Satan in the Old Testament. It was only the counsel of what he was given attributed to.
who was who was who was who was the snake in the garden.
We don't know that. It was, you could say it was a snake. You can say it was a serpent.
Right?
We
You know
don't
what? I
know.
can tell you the many things that Satan could have been in the garden.
Yeah.
If you want to
That's
hear it.
esoterics. That's esoterics.
No,
But
I'm not giving you esoterics. I'm giving like various reasons and things. If you want to hear it.
let's go.
Okay.
No.
So first of all, you had the old Mesopotamian, or not though. You had the, what is that group again? Canaan. You had the whole Canaan
Canaanites?
mythology. Yeah. And one of the Canaan gods was Asherah, and Asherah, the Asherah poles that you see in Old Testament. Asherah was a tree that also held onto snakes. And she is she's a warrior goddess, but she's also a very lustful goddess in that Canaan region. So
But now
you can,
you're speaking on, you're speaking exactly of the pantheon.
yes, I am. And that's why I said I can give you many
Oh,
views
okay.
of this, right? So that's one of the things that the snake in the garden could have been, is Asherah from the Canaan mythology. Another thing that Satan could have been in the Garden of Eden was Adam's lower region, because there's a division between her seed and his seed.
That's esotericism.
Just giving you a thought.
Okay.
I don't believe in esotericism, to be fair.
Yeah. It's like something like Sons of God of Ministries would say.
Yeah, I find esoterics to be
I
like
don't
an
even know them.
interesting little mythology and like what's
Sons of
already made
God? You
standard,
don't know him?
Uh-huh.
but it's kind of interesting.
No, I don't know.
Now, what do we feel? Who tempted Jesus in the wilderness? What's your take on that?
Definitely
Sons of
Satan.
God would say, "Oh, go ahead, go ahead."
Definitely Satan. What were we gonna say?
I was saying,
Well,
Sons of
right.
God would say it's his own esotericism, it's his own fleshly wounds that was doing that. But that's the thing about the Bible. Like you could place it, especially that
I
story. You can portray it to like kind of whatever you want to, because
yeah.
there's no actual historical evidence. So you could portray it to whatever you wanted to say.
Well, I mean, obviously, at some point, I'm going to take certain things, at face value,
Yeah.
So the temptation of Christ. So when he could have turned raw stones into bread, was that basically an inner debate in his mind that, hey, I have the
So,
ability to do this, but I'm going to fend it off?
That's a
I
good
uh,
have,
or
source.
or
so
or
my
or
view,
or the kingdoms of the world. He had it within his power to rule over the
I
kingdoms of the world if he wanted to, but he battled against that. Is that
Well,
you're
no,
kind of
that's a
no.
good source of where to
So,
start. You know.
so I,
Coach, what you
yeah,
got?
sorry, I just wanted to answer it because my view is that it's the old covenant expectations of the Christ, right? Because
Okay.
they were expecting a messianic figure, right? So God, Jesus was supposed to rule the earth, right? Um, when he came, and he's saying, "No, I'm not going to do what the old covenant messianic beliefs are. I'm gonna do what my father wants." Right? All the things there are fleshly desires, right? Like, oh, you're hungry, feed yourself, right? If you he God could save you if it's all attacking the flesh. So the Mosaic covenant beliefs were that the kingdom was going to be a fleshly kingdom, right? So the Satan is saying the Satan here is the flesh, right?
It's all fleshly.
It's
I
the
get you.
desires of the flesh, right? Which is what Israel wanted. They wanted a fleshly system, a fleshly kingdom, a real king on ruling over all the other nations. Jesus
I want to say
rejects
something
that.
about that real quick.
Well, that's a good input. That's a good input. That's a great input, actually.
I want to say something about that real quick.
Okay.
Is it funny that how Satan was trying to tempt Jesus is exactly how he tempted Adam? It's
Well,
like,
then you have to. Well, okay, if you say
like,
that, then you have to go back into the exact format of how God cannot be tempted, which is in James. So if you go to James, he says God cannot be tempted, and then you have the prayer saying, "Lead us not into temptation," when it clearly says that God cannot be tempted.
yeah,
So
I didn't finish what I was
what
saying.
exactly do we get into?
Uh, wait, are you implying that I think Jesus is God?
No, I'm not implying anything, sir. This
Okay.
is this is all open debate, and I'm not blaming you or criticizing you for anything. I'm just saying what I've seen and what I'm inputting.
Yeah, yeah. But like what I was saying was like it's funny how Satan tried to tempt Jesus like he tempted Adam. So you can turn these rocks into bread. It's like tempting them with the food, right? Tempting them with the fruit of the tree. And then um you can have all the kingdoms of the world is essentially how the snake said, no, you will be like gods. And then how he tempted Jesus saying like, oh, you can just jump off this cliff and you know God will save you. And that's exactly how the snake also said like, um you will surely not die if you eat of this.
Yeah, but at the same time, it also says in James that God cannot be tempted.
I'm not saying that God was tempted. I'm saying that Jesus was tempted.
But what
And
is
also,
Jesus?
in all the beginnings of the writings of Paul, Paul always says, God the Father and the Lord Jesus Christ. So you got to take that into consideration. So
We got a lot to think about.
Yeah. But I'm not sure what you're thinking about.
I'm thinking about, like, I'm not trying to be a Muslim or anything. Not that there's any Muslims in here that take any criticization, but there is something where there's a lot of contradiction to where God can't be man, where God can't be tempted, and we do find those verses in the Bible where he's
Oh yeah.
tempted and where he is man.
Yeah,
It does say
I
that
agree.
God placed all authority God, all authority that Jesus has was given by his Father. And if you
Well,
read
okay,
John 17, I mean, he spells it out so clearly
okay.
that
Well,
I can't do anything unless my Father tells me to. And so he is totally limited and at the control of the authority of God his Father. And the lordship of Jesus. Now, I will say I am a monotheistic person, and I believe in the lordship of Christ, and I believe basically if God puts everything under Jesus' control, then if Jesus says to jump, I say how high. But ultimately, Jesus did utter the Shema and say that the hero Israel, the Lord your God, is one.
well,
I
I do
agree.
see that too. I do see that too, where Jesus was given authority. So then, at the end of the day, we're seeing that Jesus was given authority from God to act upon on God.
Yeah, I think we all
Isn't that
agree
what
on
an
that.
ambassador is? If you have an ambassador sent
An
to another
ambassador,
country,
that's a word. There you
an
go.
ambassador has all the authority of the king. When
Act
he
about
speaks to
what you do about what you
when he
do.
speaks to another ruler or another people, he is speaking for the king. There are scriptures in the Bible that refer to Jesus as the icon of God, and the icon of God is the image of God. It is looking in the mirror and seeing God. And of course, God said, there are many scriptures say God is spirit. He can't you can't see God. Although I think was it Stephen saw God sitting on the throne and Jesus at his right hand. So there's a lot to be said. Anybody, people frown on monotheism because you're denying no, I'm not denying the lordship of Jesus Christ because he is Lord and God has set him over us and over all the angels, over all kingdoms and
Okay,
powers and everything. So
so
yeah,
let's accept the fact that he was given authority, correct?
right.
So I'm down with that. Jesus was given authority.
Can God be given authority?
Only if he's made in flesh.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just saying that there's, you know,
I'm
uh,
not negating the fact that Jesus wasn't God. I just said he wasn't the actual essence of God, but he was given authority from God.
yeah, I mean, he's the pretty much what when you see Jesus, you're seeing the Father. That's what he says. You know,
I'll say it bluntly. Jesus isn't God. Jesus is following God.
Well,
he
he's giving the authority. He literally has a
he's
Yeah,
verse where he
he
he's
is
says
given the
that he's
authority.
going to
the
give
Yes.
Lord
everything
Jesus
upon
Christ.
his footstool.
Oh yeah, but that's not saying that Jesus is God. That just means that God gave him authority. But
Just
no one
authority.
gives. Yeah,
He's given
God doesn't.
permission.
Yeah,
He's given
but God,
permission to act as
no
God
one.
onto the physical world. And this physical world he's going to give authority to, and he's going to
Right.
act out what he needs to do. And until then, he gives the authority back to God, which God becomes all in all, and the footstool becomes that was become.
Yeah.
I'm just saying. I think that we all agree on that
I think we all
subject.
agree on a lot of terms. We're just having a discussion.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think yeah. It was a highly debated subject in the second century, and
What do we have here?
I mean there were many you know uh, Trinitarianism did not necessarily rule the day everywhere. So it was a
Yeah, but good thing this isn't a Trinitarian debate.
right good deal.
Yeah, I know. I've seen those develop.
That'd be a fucking crisis.
Oh no, yeah, it is. It's yeah, it is. But yeah, but so I was going to say something about the temptation in the wilderness. The way it's the way it's documented and written in the Gospels. They didn't say, and Jesus went into the wilderness and had a debate with himself. You know.
Well,
Correct.
that's only
But I got another weird
that
thing
can
to say
only
about that.
be extracted by esotericism. That's not like biblical. That's esoterics. That's only someone who's taking something out and abiding it to their own ideology.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I got something else to add to that.
Hold on, Coach. What you got to say?
Did you guys see what we put here? I put Vassal King and Suzerain King.
Yeah.
That's what I
Let me
believe.
see that.
That's what I believe the Father and the Son are.
Right.
Can you throw that sideways?
The
So I can try to
Father
throw it
is-
sideways for you here. Let me see. I can read it out as well too. But essentially, it is a person regarded as having a mutual obligation to a lord or monarch in the context of the feudal system. But we're doing an allegory, so they are subordinate rulers aligned with the main king, showcasing loyalty and relational dynamics. Vassals held land from the king and were obligated to pay taxes. They were granted the use of king's land in return for services including homage, fealty, and military duties. I mean, that is like almost to a T fitting the shoe.
That's perfect. It's almost coherent.
It is perfect, yeah.
Yeah. So Jesus is a vassal king to the Father, who's a suzerain. So
Yeah.
that's my alignment with Scripture.
Thank you for that word, because then that makes it easier for me to argue.
That was perfect, dude.
Yeah, it's a
That was
great
perfect.
allegory to use in terms of describing like the position Christ has in this relationship dynamic with the Father to Son. This is like
I wouldn't even call it an allegory. I would just say that's the definition.
it does fit exactly
Yeah.
the services rendered. I mean, it's
Right.
literally to a T, the one-on-one. Yeah, I'm definitely putting that in the tool belt.
See, I think there is a clear difference between God and Lord. You
Well, yeah,
know,
Lord is the
every
ruler
knee shall
of
bow
the
and every
Lord.
tongue confess that Jesus Christ is God. No, it doesn't say that. It says that Jesus Christ is Lord, and you know and if they meant to say God, well, there's definitely a Greek word for that, you know, but they didn't use that. They use you know, it's a theos for God, and they use kurios for Lord, I think.
There's a different spectrum for that. Like,
Yeah, so-
for everything.
Yeah.
We can call a janitor a custodian. It's all the same thing.
Right.
It's not the same thing when it's an adeptus custodian. I'm being
okay,
silly right
well,
now. I'm being
We'll
silly.
call it the Lord of Custodians.
No, I don't know if you know I don't know if you know what an adeptus custodian is.
I don't know what indebtedness meant.
Yeah, don't worry about it. It's something nerdy.
But you can
So-
tell me. I'm willing to learn.
It
I have
has
a
nothing to do with
question.
this.
I have a
Well,
question.
I want to
for
learn
all-
words. You're
all
fine.
the panel. A question for all the panel. Since I came from an atheistic background first, and then came to Christianity later, and then went to preterism, and then whatever. Anyways, I had a long journey, but I do not understand how anyone could logically believe that if an all-powerful God exists, that somehow he allows or this evil quote unquote being called Satan to exist and cause his creation to not follow him. That doesn't
Can I
make
answer that? Can I answer
logical
that?
sense to me.
Well,
Can
you
I
put it
answer
to
that?
the
He
panel,
doesn't
right?
need a Satan, really.
Can I answer that?
Yeah, to the panel. Go ahead.
So, I can't portray that in a video game and try and give you a simulation to what's going to be going on or what's going to be going through. But the fact of humanism has always done something wrong or right lets you know already that the wrong or right is compacting to it's going to snowball, and evil is going to conform just off that badness. So humanism alone, what can we do? This is what we do. We create, we destroy, we create, we destroy.
Are you talking
As-
about like the path?
As far
to
as humans
salvation?
as far as humans in general, we create, we destroy, we create, we destroy. There's never going to be a positive form to humanism. We're always going to be creating evil.
Yeah.
And
No,
maybe that's why God never said he was going to decrete evil. He was only going to decrete sin. Not evil,
Yeah.
only sin.
But it's like
that's-
it's like what
Well,
they
hold on.
say.
Let Coach answer. Hold on.
Yeah,
Okay.
so I have no problem with the humanism part. I'm talking about the Satan devil part. That's where I'm having the problem.
What
Were
is
you
that?
talking about
What's-
like the evil worship or what?
No, what's
Yeah,
happening in the spiritual realm?
Well, hold on. I can't hear. Hold on.
So what I'm talking about is why if an all powerful God exists, why he allows, let's say Satan existed, right?
Okay.
And he rebelled against God. Why would he continually to allow Satan, right, to rebel and cause humans to fall away from God over and over and over again?
Dare I say this is a game?
Game.
Well,
Nah,
so the question I have is,
That's why I said, dare I say it's a game.
are there, Daniel alludes to it and other prophets allude to it. Are there battles going on in the spiritual realm? Where they talk about us praying, we pray and that there's spiritual battle going on. I mean, what were the demons that Jesus tossed out of people? I mean, was it just some form of epilepsy or sickness, or did the demons actually say, "Hey, please cast us into those pigs. Don't just send us out into nothing"? And
But that's something we don't know.
well, we can only know what the writers conveyed to us,
Okay, fair enough.
And so, so we know that Jesus cast out demons, and Jesus also commissioned his apostles and disciples to do greater things than he, and they went and cast out demons too. And so there is something going on in the spiritual realm. There are beings other than, I'm going to assume that the demons are not they're not human spirits. These are maybe another level of creation that just had a free will also. And that's the dilemma that God is faced with.
Don't get too far off. Don't get too far off. You're losing me.
Is God going to create a bunch of robots, or is he going to create creatures with free will?
No.
And so, I think angels are creatures of free will, and there are those who chose to contradict God.
You're losing me.
So here's where the problems lie with that view. Do you believe Satan sinned in heaven?
No, Satan was never a sinful being. Sin didn't only happen to the Israel covenant. So how can Satan sin when he was never under a covenant?
I agree with you. I'm just asking.
Oh, but I'm gonna shut my ass up.
Well, I mean, Adam sinned. He violated a statute that God laid down. Albeit it was just one that we're aware of, and he violated it. So sin did exist before then.
Yeah, but
So my view is that Satan is not an entity, and it never was. My view is that Satan is any person or thing that opposes God, or opposes God's people, and it could be anyone could be a Satan.
My office assistant could be a Satan.
Yeah, and then and as far as demons go, I think that the demons were probably people that were what's the best word to use here? Heavily indoctrinated with the law.
So Jesus cast out a bunch of heavy indoctrination into the pigs.
Yeah.
Well, you don't know the exact cultural context here.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, and that, granted, I mean, it all depends on how you want to interpret Scripture. If you want to say that all those things that he did were allegorical in nature, and
I mean,
and you're entitled to your opinion.
Allegorical pigs being shepherded by some non-Jewish folk who didn't eat meat, pork, and they. I mean, I'm just saying that you can only go by what the gospel accounts say happened. And,
so the unclean spirit that was cast out to the pigs could be, it could have been that the person had a mental disease or of some sort, right? Impurity, bondage.
I see where you're going.
Something in that nature.
And that is more of a, how would you say, a modern day psychology clinical analysis of it. But he still said, I am legion, for we are many.
But you don't
And
understand. What if that's the
That's
way
it.
they were speaking of diagnosing somebody with the same entity or a psychosis?
So Legion of
Unfortunately,
but
Legion
then
would
that means
be.
that the writer pretty much
But hold
embellished
on,
everything.
can we look it up real quick? Can
sure.
we find something on that?
While
Yeah.
you look it up, I have many things to
Was
say
the
on this.
ancient Near East demonesis the same thing as a psychosis?
Hold on, Coach
I-
wasn't finished. Hold on, Coach wasn't finished.
Yeah,
Go
so
ahead,
No,
Coach.
I'm
Legion
just
in the
gonna.
first century was tied to the Roman military. So this could be the author's way of attacking the Romans. All right, this is like a polemic against the Romans.
I get it.
Yeah, me personally, I agree with everything Coach said here.
I feel like he's onto it. That seems right.
I can't see a almighty loving God allowing some demonic creature to go around terrorizing his creations. It just don't make any common
Brother,
sense to me.
Raj, if we look at this, if we look at every what would you call it, diagnosis that would happen with among the people, there was something going on which had to do with a skin abrasion, or you know what I mean, something like a psychosis. It wasn't an actual demon; it was an actual psychosis going on with somebody.
Absolutely, yeah. That's what I'm saying. I agree with Coach all the way around. I mean, I say this a lot. I mean, I think Coach has heard me say it many times, that how somebody can think that God created this angel person and it had enough authority and power to even think it could rise up to go against its creator is
Yeah,
wild
man.
to me. It's wild.
So it could have been psoriasis. It could have been something like schizophrenia. It could have been something like alcoholism. Something could have been going on.
Absolutely.
Well,
yeah.
there's even the account. You go away from the the guy possessed by many demons. You've got them talking about that if you cast out a demon, and if you don't, I forgot what it is that he said. If you don't do this, he'll go around and he'll bring more back, and it'll be worse off. I mean,
That could have been a plague.
Yeah,
It could have been chicken pox.
Yes,
It could have
you
been
know.
smallpox.
Yeah, like, remember,
Psoriasis.
if you don't take all of your antibiotics, it could come back worse.
well, take for instance, they do seem to understand, the disciples and the writers, especially Luke, who was a physician, understood the difference between, and he healed those with diseases, and the woman who had the issue of blood, and the people running around with leprosy and whatnot. That he didn't say, oh, the person with leprosy was possessed by a demon. He didn't say the woman with the issue of blood was possessed by a demon. The blind man was possessed by a demon. And even those who believe that the blind man was blind because he was evil from birth and things like that, even the disciples that they admonished admonished them for believing that this man was blind so that later Jesus could come and show the glory of God by healing him. I mean, there is a differentiation between diseases and demon possession in New Testament scripture. I mean, so.
But what do we actually? What do we? Go ahead. I am time. Go ahead, Raj.
The Legion thing, if you think about it, he's meeting them where they're understanding that. But they thought demons and things of this nature come out of the abyss, which was, the ocean, lake, sea, whatnot. So when he casts these demons back into the pigs, and the pigs run down to the ocean and drown itself, what he's doing, he's symbolizing that he's sending the demons back to where they come from.
Well, I kind of think he just tricked them personally. I think they were gonna, hey, just send us into those guys, and we'll be fine. Well, we don't mind being in a bunch of pigs. And then the pigs went and off themselves anyway, and they were still cut loose from the living. They thought they could inhabit something else, and he just kind of he kind of he pulled a genie wish on them, so to speak, and then
I
they
got
didn't
you.
really get what they wanted. You know.
Yeah, I got you. I believe it was mental illness, and it when it entered those pigs, it literally drove them wild. They went hysterical and ran down to the water and drowned themselves.
Okay,
Because
so that being said, what mental illness can be cast out of one person into a creature, another creature that's not even human? So
At that point, the same thing.
Anxiety.
So at that point, I would say that there's something
Anxiety
spiritual-
can be
there's something
transferred real
spiritual
quick.
going on there.
Survival
Whether
It's literally
responses would be
scientifically
probably
proven.
one of them.
Anxiety can do that.
okay,
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
So my view is that if there was demons, then it obviously ended in the first century. But I would say that means that God was allowing demons to possess humans so that he can show that he was at work, which I don't really like that idea, to be honest. I really don't.
Well, wouldn't that mean he ended in the first
The third
century?
of the angels, that takes away that. The third of the
Third of the
angels.
angels,
fell from
what?
heaven.
No, but the third of the
So what is that?
angels.
Interesting.
The third of the
Finkeldorf
angels
in the
that
comments
you-
here says that the pig demon story is a polemic against Rome. What do you guys think about that?
It is a polemic
It
against
is a
Rome.
polemic? Okay.
Yeah, but Revelation 12,
That makes sense.
right? When we look at the third of the angels, then right, we see the dragon and his angels wage war, and it did not prevail, and there was no longer a place for them found in heaven. But the problem is that the synagogue of Satan in Revelation 2 and 3 are those who those who call themselves Jews but are not, right? So these are the dragons, the angels are those unbelieving Jews that are unaliving the Christians and persecuting the Christians. He's not talking about literal angels.
yeah, I believe they're more than messengers. Not an angelical creature with wings and things of this
Yeah.
nature.
I'm just making sure you're consistent there.
I'm very
It
consistent.
does take away that.
So what was
Keep it in mind.
what was the vision of Ezekiel?
Which one? Which vision?
Well, there's some
A lot of
very
visions.
very detailed visions of the wheel within the wheel and God on the the Spirit of God and coming down, and there was some very elaborate visions.
None of that can be true. I mean, all that had to be metaphoric or allegorical or some word.
Which vision in particular? Because he's got a lot of them.
Well, there's I want to say let me see. I'm trying to picture the Valley of Dry Bones. Is that in Ezekiel? It's been a while. I haven't read
that's
Ezekiel in a while.
37 or 36.
But there's some very elaborate descriptions, and of the angels, the cherubim, the seraphim, however you want to categorize them. They had, I'm sure that the Hebrew had several different descriptive, rankings of how they ranked the angelic creatures. But I mean,
I'm not
at some
denying-
point, if you start to want to say that that all other creatures that are not human, that those are all symbolic, or they're this and that, then you're just one step away from saying, well, God's just a symbol too, and then all this debate is really for nothing, But I'm just saying, then you go back over to humanism. So what I'm saying is that there is, yeah, I at some point
I'm not
to start.
saying that there's no angels. That's not what I'm saying. Because I think there might be some angels. What I'm saying is that I don't understand, right? If the angels that supposedly went against God, I don't understand why God would allow them to continue to rebel.
He allows us to continue to rebel
and mistreat humans, right? And have power over humans, right? Possess them and do all these atrocities to humans. That I don't understand. I don't see why a loving God would allow that.
That kind
And
of
Well,
also
it may be
how-
that it may be that the angelic or side of the angelic, let's call it a dimension. Maybe they don't necessarily exist in the same dimension that we do, and that we see them walking and talking and physically in this world, but they butt up against our existence. And there's an influence, like touching somebody through a veil. Then you can't see them, but you can. They're there, you know, and that their influences are of that type. And you know, and some people allow that influence to go much farther than they should, you know. That may be that's how they're limited, because you know, otherwise if they were just fully angelic beings that were sent down and they're physical in nature and rampaging through the earth, you know, well, heck, we don't have much of a chance, do we? But I think they
I don't like that. I don't like that at all.
Yeah, I don't like that either.
yeah, I think they have a, I think they are the plane of
That's a little
existence that
savage,
they're
don't you
on.
think?
I think the plane of existence that they exist on, it runs up against us too closely, like that wall that divides us on the highway. You don't want to get too close to that. I'm just saying they're real close by, and they have influences, and
They still have free will.
and
Yeah.
that's the whole thing. They're, as angelic creatures, they're not robots. They have free will too. So
yeah, I mean, I have some issues with certain passages in the Bible, like, you know, God going to Mary, like, you know, like, and the angel's talking to her, and she's like, by the way, you're going to be pregnant, and you're going to have the Son of God, and she's like, yeah, cool, you know, like, okay, thanks, God, yeah, I'm in. Like, didn't even ask for her permission, nothing. It's just like, yep, you're pregnant. Good luck. Oh, and by the way, I'm gonna help you out. I'm gonna tell Joseph that it's okay, because you know.
And that's where Old Testament guys get their fame from.
Just think about this when we
I
think
see it
about
as
angels
Jesus-
of love. If y'all
Mainly
think about
with
this for a
Jesus being
moment.
born like outside the argument. You know, the argument of what's. I mean, you've taken sin from me, you've taken Genesis from me, you've taken so many things. It's hard to start to say what I really want to say.
Who, me?
Well, no, just all the different ideals and thoughts. And, you know, I've always, you know, by page 6, you're at Noah's Ark. You know, everything before that, there's just not much information, you know, the creation story. So all this, so then finding out it's written in Babylon. So
Well, it's
it
not a
makes
creation
more
story.
sense that this is
It's not a
about
creation story.
it makes more sense that this is about Israel, you know, and just about it. No
Right.
creation story, you know, no nothing like that. It just, but when you do eliminate the creation story, you're eliminating a tremendous amount of knowledge that you think you have, but now you don't. Like the Adam and Eve, you know, if it was just groups of people, you know, I see it as God having a creation and something happening causing an argument. And then Jesus was here to fix that argument and did, and is symbolized forever in heaven through New Jerusalem. And God has his creation back.
Hey,
Yeah.
can I ask you a
Yes.
question? Oh, hold
Yeah.
on. Can I ask you a question? And answer me on this, because I want to know.
I will.
Do you feel or think that Adam and Eve could have been actual real people?
It doesn't really bother me either way. It doesn't
It has
take
to.
it away from me.
Hold
So
it.
I'm back and forth on it. It makes more sense that they weren't real people and that story is not what it's made out to be.
The
It
reason
makes
why I'm
logical
asking it-
sense.
Well, the reason why I'm asking is I want to try to help you a little bit if I can,
For sure,
even
yeah.
away from the biblical standpoint of it. Through biology, two people could have never sustained human creation.
Well, I've heard the
inbreeding. We
argument
would've
both
died- we
ways,
would've-
and if the
we would've
other
died
guy was
out.
here, he could argue with you. I've heard it where that actually you could start with two people and it developed to this.
No,
It
I
can't.
wouldn't.
Probably they are.
It's scientifically impossible.
Yeah,
inbreeding.
you're
Yeah,
dealing with
diversity.
mitochondria, Eve, or whatever they call it. What's the word for it?
Right.
Well, you're not
There's
going to the mitochondrial DNA because that
yeah,
would go to
the
a different.
haplogroups and all of that.
Yeah.
I'm more inclined to believe. I'm more inclined to believe that the garden is 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 a compilation of the history of Israel and the lineage of Abraham going back as far as they can go, and that there were other people existing around the world. I mean, you got China, going. I mean, the Asian continent there going strong 3 or 4,000 years BC. You've got
You got Genghis Khan.
yeah, I mean, you've got so much. India's history goes back to 7 or 8,000 BC. You've got so much stuff going on around the world that the whole timeline between the quote unquote the flood and even a period after the flood, how much of that is well, one, you got the extended, Methuselah died the year of the flood, so he missed the boat for some reason. But
Yeah.
you got you got all those extended ages, and who was Cain afraid of when he was expelled, from among them? So
It makes more sense on a local flood.
Oh, yeah,
if
well,
anything,
absolutely.
which would be.
I am definitely an old Earth creationist. I am. The Earth is literally 4.5 billion years old at a minimum.
Yeah,
and there is no
that makes more
evidence
sense.
in
You got a
in
brain
the
on you.
sedimentary layers of a global flood in any time of a recent epoch.
Hey, ¿sabes qué? You got a brain on you, primo.
What was that?
I just meant it makes you got a brain on your cousin.
Oh
You
yeah,
already
well,
know.
but it doesn't necessarily mean I would consider myself a theistic evolutionist. I believe that man, we are cousins of the great apes. We share the same genetic scars. It's something called retrovirus. Endogenous retroviruses that have occurred in our past, that our great ape cousins have the same genetic scars of a past event that we do. So we all come, but it's all God directed. I believe God is in control of the evolutionary path, and that's a whole other debate. But
You're fine. You're fine. We could only go to that path. There will only it can only be tweaked for a little bit.
Yeah, I know. So what I'm saying is that the limitations we try to let the Bible limit, and what we found out over the last several thousand years is that typically you find that it's our interpretation of Scripture that is flawed. I mean, when we used to think that the Earth was the center of the universe and the church was killing people, that went against that until Galileo came around and
with the heliocentrism.
Yeah, so
and they didn't know anything about that.
They tried to say
followed it.
The Bible proved it.
No,
the Bible said this. The Bible said that.
I understand that.
Yeah,
but heliocentrism can only go back for so long, and we can't dial back that far enough. Not even mitochondrial DNA, nothing.
Yeah.
So I mean, like, we're still stuck with the question mark to what we're doing and why we're here.
Oh yeah, bro.
Yeah. So for like creationists, I guess they would have to have miraculous events, which is sure. Like, I mean, Jesus raised from the dead, right? Like, I don't know. If you believe some of the Bible stories, right, of the flood, and if you believe, like, you'd have to believe in a lot of miracles, for that to happen, right? Because
power up,
power off. but yeah, like, just I mean, if two people populated the whole world, you would have a lot of issues in the first generations.
You'd have ancestry.
Yeah.
Do you think
unless
And
unless
There was a second creation.
no, unless the people were so pure in blood, right? Because God created them so perfect that their creations were also pure in blood, and they didn't have any genetic problems, and they were able to reproduce.
That's God-wise. That's God-wise. It's not
Yeah.
scientifical.
It's not scientific.
Yeah,
I know it's not scientific.
well,
I said it's God-wise. It's God-wise.
even through evolution, there's still a point. There's still a point where, you know, the human. You know, we still are going to trade. You know, all of everybody on the earth right now will be at some point in time has one common ancestor.
That's not true. That would be ancestry.
No, there would have to be.
you
Our
go
lineage
far back
it's
enough?
it's a tree. It's a tree, and it will go back.
Well, hold on,
At
coach.
some point, it has to
Hold on,
intersect.
coach. Let me talk to coach. If we go that far back, it would be ancestral, and we would be committing some type of, you know what I mean. I
Yeah.
don't want to say the word.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to get them banned.
No, I get
So
it,
the question
Oh,
is,
well.
the question is that was there another miraculous event where all of a sudden 10,000 people showed up at the same time?
The only thing I could say was there was a second ancestral through the Bible.
Right. There's also the possibility that this creation story is just talking about Israel, and God created other humans at the same time.
So you're almost talking like panspermia. You know,
Well,
I mean,
hold
it's
on.
like saying life came to Earth from other planets.
But there also is a second. There also is a second creation story in Genesis.
There is two creation stories. So.
Yeah, the second chapter. Yeah, I know. So,
Yeah.
well,
well,
guys,
yeah, I'm saying there's a point.
This is fun. This is
where,
fun. I
you know,
like talking
beyond,
about this
beyond
shit.
these waters, there are dragons. So I really, I mean,
We
don't
need to
know.
talk about this shit, bro. Come
yeah,
on.
I'm gonna call it right
Well,
now.
me
I've been
personally,
going for
guys,
almost like 3 hours now, boys.
Well, this is what we do know, right? We know absolutely nothing. That's what we know.
That's true. That's true. We don't know shit.
That's the realistically humble route to always go with it, man. Is that we can always learn more. We can look into it and discuss
Yeah.
it more, and we learn more about it and reason it out. But
Yep.
I'll probably hop on again soon. I'll probably do this in another couple days, but I'm gonna call the live in a few minutes. Do you have something you wanted to say? I am time.
Yeah, you know, as far as where we actually come from, where creation started from, this is not no issue to me, to be honest. I love talking about it, but it's basically never mind to me. I believe God is the creator of all, so irrelevant how he went about it and did it. But I do enjoy talking about it.
Hey, thank
one
you,
last
thank you,
thing
Tobias.
is-
This was a great live.
Yeah, man. Thanks.
Absolutely. One
to
last thing, when
all
we're
of
talking
you
about
showing
the
up
gods and
being
everything.
here. That was awesome. Yeah, if you guys all hop out and talk about this stuff, this is cool. It's a good, like, I don't expect to do this for like an hour and a half. We went double that, so I'm really satisfied with this. I appreciate all of you guys participating in this, and I'll definitely do this again soon.
No,
Go ahead, I am time.
Very, very,
Yes,
very
go ahead, I
nice
am time.
talking to all of you
Hold
guys.
on. Let I am time go. He was gonna say something.
Oh, I was just going to say, I'll leave y'all with, we're talking about angels and stuff. Through some of the research that I did, there is support for this, that when Yahweh become Yahweh, the God of all gods, all the other gods became angels. They was demoted.
Interesting.
I'm gonna chew on that.
Yeah, we should have a man. I want to think about that. I'll look into that.
Tell Wayne to go live.
Yeah, it's gonna have to happen, dude. Maybe we'll
Hey,
talk about
thank you,
this.
Tobias. I appreciate you.
I'll look into
This
this.
was fun.
I'll make
All
it
of them
easy.
were demoted, and Jesus was promoted. Just so you guys know.
Hey, there you go,
Amen
Coach
to that.
P.
Amen to
Out
that.
here with the
This
segue.
motherfucker always knows how to say something cool.
Oh, look, dude.
Coach is the man.
You guys have a good night, man.
Good
Take it
night,
easy,
gents.
brother.
Thank you all.
Yeah, enjoyed it, man.
Absolutely. Thank y'all.
Enjoyed it too. Take it easy, guys. Take it easy, A Roach. Peace out, guys.
See ya.